started with the board meeting. Welcome to this evening's Town of Amherst Town Board meeting of Monday, February 5th, 2024. This evening, we're holding the meeting in memory of James Martin Nesper, Esquire, who served the town as Amherst Town Attorney for many years. We'll keep him and his family in our thoughts. And I'm going to forego an invocation this evening and ask everybody to please rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, I would ask our town clerk to please call the roll. I would ask everybody to please be quiet, and I would ask our town clerk to please call the roll.
Supervisor Copa.
Here.
Councilmember Berger.
Here.
Councilmember Lavin.
Present.
Councilmember Zuccalla.
Here.
And Councilmember Marinucci.
Here.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from Monday, January 22nd, 2024. I'm going to move those as they appeared in our agenda this evening.
I'm going to second them, and I need to point out that at the last meeting, the agenda cut off a line on the liaisons to departments. Angela and I are both liaison to Youth and Rec. It is correct in the minutes that we're voting on tonight, so we just wanted to point that out.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda are public hearings. Before we begin those, I'm going to ask our parliamentarian to please read the decorum for this evening's public hearings and public expression.
Thank you, Supervisor Culpa. With regard to public participation tonight and at other town board meetings, there will be several opportunities for you to address the town board. I would like to review with you the town board's rules of order with regard to decorum, public hearings, and public expression. For your convenience, there are copies of the full rules of order available for your review in the containers attached to each door of this chamber. There you will also find copies of tonight's agenda. The rules of order and full agenda packets are also available on the town's website. With regard to decorum, decorum must be maintained throughout tonight's meeting. Pursuant to the rules of order, speakers shall address the board as a whole and refrain from any partisan political commentary, personal, impertinent, slanderous, or profane remarks, catcalls, noisemakers, or other outbursts that disrupt the order of the meeting. Any person who makes such remarks or otherwise disrupts the meeting with loud outbursts, shouting, threats, or other disruptive behavior shall, at the discretion of the supervisor or after a motion and a majority consensus of the board, be ruled out of order. With regard to public hearings, there are a number of public hearings scheduled for tonight. The petitioner may present for up to 15 minutes. Following the petitioner, neighborhood representative or their attorney may also have 15 minutes to comment on the subject of the hearing. Thereafter, all speakers at public hearings may only speak once and comment for up to 3 minutes. The town clerk will ring a bell once to let you know you have 30 seconds to finish, and then the town clerk will ring a bell a second time, 2 rings, to let you know when your time is finished. Written comments may be submitted at any time prior to the close of the hearing and will be included as part of the official record for the hearing. With regard to public expression, there are 2 opportunities for you to address the board with comments on topics not covered within the public hearing scheduled for tonight. Pursuant to the rules of order, the purpose of public expression is to allow opportunity for the public to formally communicate with the board on any matter involving Amherst. This is not designed to be a conversation with the board, but an opportunity for the public to express their opinion on issues that the board will cover during that meeting or to bring attention to an issue involving Amherst. Speakers may comment for up to 3 minutes. Again, the town clerk will ring the bell once when you have 30 seconds left and twice when your time is finished. There's a sign-up sheet at the podium for you to indicate your interest in speaking. Once those that have signed up are finished, the supervisor will ask if there are any additional speakers who would like to comment. Again, a final reminder that decorum must be maintained. All remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole and not any single member. In the event the speaker's inquiry is urgent or their comment is inaccurate, the supervisor or a town board member may respond for 1 minute after the close of public expression. Thank you for your adherence to these rules of order.
Okay, that said, we have 3 public hearings tonight. The first one is 775. It's a special use permit for Tier 3 solar system. We're going to actually hold this one last. The second public hearing was on the local law to enhance transparency and participation in the town of Amherst budget process. That was filed incorrectly. We're going to adjourn that to February 26th. If you have comments regarding it, you're certainly welcome to bring those forward during public expression. I'm going to motion to adjourn that to February 26th so that it can be republished.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, Resolution 117 is a designation of property at 22 Chateau Terrace as a local historic landmark. It's a nomination brought to us by our Historic Preservation Commission. I'm going to motion to open the public hearing at this time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And do we have somebody presenting that? Jane, oh, Brian, okay.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brian Swartz. I am the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission for the town of Amherst, and I'm here to present on behalf of 22 Chateau Terrace. Hopefully, maybe.
A little trouble with our clicker here.
Thank you. So this is, again, 22 Chateau Terrace. I am the petitioner for this landmark designation application. Next. There you see a map of the property located off Main Street. I just wanted to go over Amherst Town Code and the reason why we're here. 121-5 establishes the Historic Preservation Commission with our various powers designating historic landmarks, and 121.6, the criteria for designation of those landmarks, and I'm going to get into those criteria here. Next. These are the 5 criteria in our town code that we can choose from. Any property could qualify for one of the 5 criteria. In this case, for 22 Chateau, we've selected 1, 2, and 5. We held a meeting on August 8th, 2023, collected interdepartmental and public comment, and then we voted 5-1 at our next meeting on September 12th, 2023, to recommend designation to the town board. In this case, the applicable criteria for this property is 1, associated with the lives and individuals of people or events significant in the national, state, or local history. 2, embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction. And 5, unique location or singular physical characteristic represents an established or familiar visual feature of the neighborhood. So this is Criteria 1, associated with the lives and individuals of people. Chateau Terrace, part of the College Hill Chateau Terrace development, 20th century residential subdivision, access via Main Street in Snyder, New York, was the hamlet of Amherst. We're considering this a gateway to the Chateau Terrace neighborhood. Criteria A2 embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type or period. Common features of this craftsman style included low-pitched gable triangular roofs, overhang eaves with exposed rafters, beams, patterned windows, windowed panes, and a covered or enclosed porch. And the final one is 5. Establish a familiar visual feature of the neighborhood. Because it is the first house on the street, we felt that it was a gateway to the community, and it has prominence in that effect. I will take any questions.
All right, so first questions from the board?
Hi. In the original application, there was a marking by the applicant for the HPC may recommend designation of a group of properties as a historic district, and they cited that an area that represents several periods or styles of architecture. In the supplemental documentation, it said there are maybe 200 craftsman homes, but a quarter of those are in this neighborhood specifically. Why did you choose to, as HPC recommend, only designating this home and not the entire neighborhood or other additional properties?
So one of our stated goals for this coming year and into the next year is going to, we'd like to try to recommend the entire neighborhood for historic designation, but we have not completed that work yet. So as a first effort into doing so, this is the first house in the neighborhood, and that's why we selected to go with this one first. Let's go ahead.
If this structure is set aside for landmark designation, that means that no work can be done on the outside, but work could still be done modifying the inside of the building?
Yeah, well, of course, work can always be done on the outside of a house, but it requires approval by our board for an exterior on a local landmark property. Interior work can continue. We have no jurisdiction over interior work once landmark status is achieved, unless we specifically say that in the application.
Go ahead.
Being a resident of the neighborhood and having taken many walking tours of Snyder, a number of houses on Chateau Terrace have been identified as having people who are significant that lived in them. But this house is not one of them. So why would you just choose one house and not do the entire neighborhood? I would think you need to wait. I am entitled to ask questions, and I'm waiting for an answer.
Sure. Like I said, we have not gotten into the research for all of the other properties as of yet. That is a stated goal of our group this year. We feel that being the first house in the neighborhood and its prominence in that effect does qualify it for historic landmark status. Like I said, the goal is to continue the work and complete more historic landmark statuses for the rest of the neighborhood. We had enough information both from the property owner and a resident in the neighborhood to move forward with this designation. So that's why we brought it first.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I know the answer to this, but just to clarify, the entirety of the property was nominated for landmark status?
That's correct.
Obviously had an issue. I know it didn't come before your board with the garage, so
That's
that,
correct.
that's in my mind, that's a huge problem, and
It's
points
not
to
for my board to comment on.
understood. All right. Are there further questions from this board for Brian? Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. So is there my understanding is that there's nobody here representing the owner, Benderson Development. Is that correct? We did receive a rather lengthy letter of objection from Benderson Development's attorney that needs to be added to the record for the public hearing. I think we have a designated neighborhood representative. Yep, so you're welcome to speak. You've got 15 minutes, if I'm not right. Is that 15?
Okay. Sam Smith. I'm going to present on 22 Chateau. I want to start off by asking for this hearing to be open because as it came to light that Benderson just submitted a large packet, and I would like this meeting to be open for the next hearing, or for the next meeting.
Sam, can you just give your address? I'm sorry.
60 Fruhoff.
Thank you.
So next slide. I want to start with this quote from the president of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. When you strip away the rhetoric, preservation is simply having the good sense to hold on to things that were well designed, that link us with our past in a meaningful way, and that have plenty of good use left in them. Next slide. This is from Snyder's action plan. This is from the town of Amherst's own documentation. The character of a community also suffers because significant portions of the Snyder business district have been hollowed out for parking. These two trends, increased parking areas and fewer historic structures, make Snyder less coherent and imageable than Ellicottville, Niagara-on-the-Lake, or even the village of East Aurora. Next slide. These are the three qualifying criteria that you have heard. A5 is basically a feature of the neighborhood. A2 is the type of material of construction, and A1 is how it's associated with the lives and events of people, not a specific person. Next slide. So again, regarding criteria A5, how it's a familiar feature of the neighborhood, 22 Chateau Terrace is identified as lot number 2 in the original subdivision map for the College Hill Terrace. Number 22 Chateau, don't move your slides. Number 22 Chateau was among the first 3 houses of this new development, and it set the tone for the houses to follow. With lot dimensions of 80 by 80, it was the first of 3 regular-sized residential properties after the larger Main Street parcel, which served commercial purposes. These properties serve as a gateway to the Chateau Terrace neighborhood. As the first residential property, number 22 Chateau represents an established and familiar visual feature of the neighborhood. It helps divide the commercial from the residential as well. Next slide is about Sauer and Sauer. So the developers of the College Hill Terrace, now known as Chateau Terrace, were William C.T. Sauer and Arthur M. Sauer, and they formed their agency in 1894. These brothers were influential in the Delaware Park area and surrounding neighborhoods, and throughout North Buffalo. They then expanded to Snyder with College Hill and College Hill Chateau Terrace subdivision. Washington Highway was at the center of College Hill, across from Damon College. There, along with Charles S. Burkhardt, they built middle-class homes. They advertised their homes in the Buffalo News to attract buyers to Snyder from the Buffalo area. They then bought more former farmland and continued to develop towards Kensington Avenue. All this new development boom contributed to a 110% population increase in Amherst from 1920 to 1930. Again, that influences the lives of people. In July 1919, Chauncey and Emily Hamlin, founder of the Buffalo Museum of Science, sold the land that comprises what is now known as Chateau Terrace to the Sauer brothers. Next slide. So again, in summary, the Sauer brothers are associated with the early 20th century planned residential developments, including 22 Chateau Terrace. They are known as major contributors to the upward mobility and local suburban development in Amherst and Snyder in the early 20th century. They were a key firm in developing first-generation suburban development in the greater Buffalo region, specifically Snyder. Next slide. Again, this is the Sauer and Sauer College Hill office located at the southwest corner of Main Street and Washington Highway. It was present in the early 1900s, and it's still present today, serves as a real estate building. So they themselves are important, and their developments are important. Next slide. This is the 1923 Sanborn map. A Sanborn map is the fire kind of like district map, and it kind of is a detailed map of the U.S. cities and towns in the 19th and 20th century. So on this map, I just want to paraphrase what the HPC, your own HPC, recommends, that this neighborhood has seen erosion of its character by a commercial development encroaching on the residential lots, making the property and lot of 22 Chateau its preservation even more valuable. Specifically, they note the Bornhava development by joining previously narrow parcels, which then allow for a larger development on Main Street, shows the importance of maintaining the character of the Chateau neighborhood, starting at the first residential parcel with the regular 80 by 80 parcel. And again, I also want to point out that there's no houses on boroughs. And further, towards Kensington, they're all on Fruhoff and Chateau. This is the beginning of this neighborhood. Next slide. So again, regarding this first criteria, the neighborhood setting number 22 Chateau is important because it creates a distinction between the residential and commercial properties along Chateau Terrace. It is the gateway to the neighborhood, and 22 Chateau Terrace is the first residential lot in the subdivision by Sauer & Sauer. It has prominence and is held in a higher regard than the lots deeper in the district. Again, I want to emphasize that we, as well as your own HPC, talk about the lot and its significance to the neighborhood and not just the house. Next slide. So the next criteria is A2, the actual materials of the building itself. It embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type or period or method of construction, and 22 Chateau Terrace is distinctive for the craftsman style, circa 1920 to 1940s. The common features of the craftsman style include the low-pitched gables, triangular roofs, overhanging eaves with exposed rafters and beams, patterned window patterns, and covered or enclosed front porches. It retains a high degree of integrity of design, materials, and craftsmanship. Features of exposed roof rafters and decorative bracing and bracing under gables, smooth stucco exterior, and a characteristic shared by many revival and eclectic styles of the early 20th century, especially in suburban developments. Next slide. Next slide shows actually the two sister houses. The yellow one is 22 Chateau, and the other one is 30 Chateau, and they are mirror images of each other. And then I want to point out, as the HPC and Waterman Culpa emphasized in her own letter from the HPC, this housing style represents a very small area of Amherst. There's maybe 110,000 houses, and of that, 200 are mostly in Snyder, are craftsmen. That's 0.18% of the properties are craftsman style. Now take those that have been modified, no longer significant examples of the style, but this particular craftsman is a stucco. And of that, they postulate maybe 8 houses in all of Amherst are stucco craftsmen. So that's a 0.007% of the building stock in all of Amherst. So this is one example of a craftsman that is important and very rare to the town. Next slide. So this is the last criteria, A1, how it's associated with the lives of individuals or people or events of significant and national and state local history. So it's not to say it has to be associated with one specific person. It's a impact of the people. So specifically here is, I'm going to do a description of the neighborhood and thus the type of people it attracted. And I will reiterate a lot of many of the points that I previously mentioned. How a town is laid out is important to the town's history, whether it's farming, commercial, or residential. Chateau Terrace is a dense residential area along Main Street developed between 1910 and 1930. Had distinctive architectural style homes, many developed by the Sauer brothers, with winding streets and mature trees, and was close to the Tunerville Trolley, connecting the city of Buffalo with the suburbs along Main Street, Eggertsville, Snyder, Williamsville, all the way up to Transit Road. With the use of the automobile, it gave a straight shot that was provided to the city of Batavia in the north and the city of Buffalo in the south. The early 20th century development attracted to this area, and the resulting influx of people, again, that 110% increase in people in that time period, allowed for work, life, and play that was further away from home. We have descendants from the Snyder family who live on Chateau. Amherst Central High School's first principal lived on Chateau, not necessarily in this house, but it affected the upward mobility and the growth of the population. So this one singular property is important because it is, again, the gateway to the Chateau Terrace neighborhood. It invites people in, and this neighborhood's development is important to Amherst development. Next slide is about Louis W. Ball. He himself he was the first owner of 22 Chateau Terrace. He is that one in the red box. He was part of the Snyder Fire Department. He has been part of the Snyder Fire Department from 1922 to 1961. He also was a police officer within the town of Amherst. And I can give you more detail about him. But we're going to go to the next slide. This is the appearance of 22 Chateau from the 2016 MLS listing. You can look at it. Next slide. Again, it still looks intact. Next slide. Next slide, this is the door. You can see that the dining room is still very much in good condition. Next slide. You can still have the leaded windows, the hardwood floors, the stairwells, the built-in bookshelves. Next slide. This is the kitchen. You can see that the cabinetry is well intact. You have the original tile floors. If you look at your reports from Benderson, they submitted something from the Commonwealth Heritage Group. They showed photos. When they bought the property in 2018, no work has been done, and within the photos, you will actually see a lot of these doors of the cabinets have been ripped off, and a lot of the internal features have been, in a sense, demolished to make the structure look like it's in worse condition. This is what it looked like in 2016 prior to it being sold. Next slide. Actually, yeah, so I just talked about that. So the next slide, this is actually from the SHPO, New York State Parks and Recreation and Historic Preservation Commission. So you can just go to the next slide. I specifically want to talk about how they talk about 22 Chateau being historic. They talk about it's at a local level. Our local HPC feels that this structure, and not only the structure, but the lot itself is historic for historic designation. But additionally, New York State Office of Preservation wrote in a letter to the current owner saying that the property is valuable and contributes to the district at a state level. So we're talking about a local designation, and Benderson's going to argue from a state level, okay? But even still, it is, while it's still historic in a state level, we're looking at a local representation, which your local HBC has said it is historic. So one of the other things that they ask is that the owner provide an alternative analysis documenting the process that led to the decision to demolish these historic structures rather than adapt and reuse what appears to be serviceable buildings. They still have not answered that request from SHPO. Next slide. This is from your own Historic Preservation Commission, talking about how the whole property, again, is associated with the history of suburban development of Amherst, and the whole property should be landmarked. Next slide. This is images of the garage. The top left one is from your own Town of Amherst CPI website. The next one is from 2016. You can look at the garage. It still looks intact. The lower left is the Commonwealth report. It's just one angle, but you can already see how the garage has some, it's boarded up on the front. And from the Commonwealth report, you will see that there's a hole in the roof. When you purchase a property, you don't, and you can see it looks like there's a brand new roof. You don't typically purchase a property with an intended hole in the roof and say, oh, it's okay, I'm just gonna knock down this structure, unless you have an intent of that. So to have a property, you can see how it's in one condition in 2016, and then in a 5-year period, how it has deteriorated over time. And that's not an issue with the property itself, that's an issue of the owner and the usage. And then we set a meeting on January 22nd to hold this public hearing. 3 days later, that is the current garage. They needed HPC approval for demolition of the garage. That was also a condition of the planning department, and yet no permit was issued, and the garage, as you can see, is no longer standing. So that is the formula that is followed by a property, allow it to deteriorate, and then say it is in bad condition. Your own building department said that this structure needed to be torn down in August, and yet in September, your own HPC said you still do not have permission to knock down the garage. Next slide. Again, this is basically a timeline of events, mostly pertaining to the garage, where planning board approves a project pending HPC evaluation and approval of a demolition. Again, conditions of the permit for the HPC. HPC still has not given the approval, and then the garage has been demolished. I also want to talk about how no one is taking accountability for what is going on in terms of the work of the area. So when the garage was demolished, we called the building department, took a while for someone to answer. I know during the work session with the new report from Benderson, it was brought up that, well, what should we do if we don't make a decision today? Are these properties going to be an issue from further work? I would like to say that we actually have a temporary restraining order legally accessed as of February 1st, and work continued on February 2nd. Work continued today, and we have contacted since 7 a.m. We have contacted our lawyers, we have contacted the town building department. I tried calling Mark Burke myself, he never called me back, but I called Tom from the building department. I was told they got no letter. even though I emailed it to them. Then I was told, well, they're not demolishing it, so it's okay, they're allowed to do asbestos abatement, even though the TRO says you cannot touch any of these properties. It took until about 2 o'clock for anyone to get off the properties. So we have followed our legal process, and we have contacted the town multiple times today and throughout the process when we have had legal standing for TRO, and no one has helped us. So who do we contact? Because we have followed the appropriate things. We have educated ourselves. We have found out about this process. So, additionally, we contacted the police department. They said it's not their jurisdiction. They said the building department said they have the ability to do it. The building department said they're doing asbestos abatement. That's okay, even though it's not within the TRO. And then they said you should call the Department of Labor. So we have gone around in circles today.
Are you set?
Yeah. Is that my 15 minutes, or was that okay?
Yeah. So I think it was made pretty clear today, town-wide, that TRO was in place, but, right. So there's no question that there shouldn't be any work there. And that is enforceable with police. Okay.
So who enforces that is my question, and who do we
So
contact?
It's enforceable by the building department and/or police, right? It's a court order.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have that conversation on our department head meeting with the chief tomorrow morning. As far as the garage, I will tell you, I was equally upset because there is a process in place when Historic Preservation Commission nominates something. And I don't buy that, accidents happen or that there's miscommunications all the time. What I will say is, we have fined them. We do, I know that's superfluous.
It's $250 from
I
what
understand, but we are going to push everything we can at that situation, including past permits, and I believe they still have to go get a certificate of appropriateness for demolition. Regarding the building itself, that's been a concern. The demolition of the home, I believe, is what you're referring to. I brought that up in work session today. Because there's under no conditions should the house be touched, and the garage shouldn't have been touched. The house can't be touched. And I wanted to verify that as we go through a process here over the next couple of weeks, the next few weeks of getting through the public hearing, closing the public hearing, moving into a decision, that everybody in our building department, police department, understand that local landmark nomination is in fact its own stay on any demolition or work on those buildings. And that there's under no circumstance should there be anybody touching, in this case, 22 Chateau. With respect to the TRO on the other properties, that's court ordered, but this is doubled up with local landmark nomination.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And part of local landmark nomination also, one of the criteria is you need to rebuild structures if you demolish them.
ultimately that's going to be, if assuming, and I can't assume, but I shouldn't assume for the board, if the board were to accept the nomination, landmark the structure, then there would need to be a certificate of appropriateness put in place by our Historic Preservation Commission for any work done on the site. So I don't know exactly how all that's going to go, but that's currently where we're at. And it will be readdressed tomorrow on a department head call that there's a TRO in place by the court that's enforceable, and that there is an enforceable stay put on any work on this property by the act of nomination.
And then who does the community contact when, again, we have done our part and
You
showed
should
legal
be able
document.
to contact either the building department or the police department at this point, and we'll make that clear. But a court order and an action by Historic Preservation Commission are both the first is enforceable by police and building department, the latter by the building department.
Okay. I mean, the community is angry because you said we should be able to, and we should, and we did, and it took us, what, 7 hours?
And
So,
that shouldn't happen. I get it. I don't know. I wasn't, nobody came up and said, hey, we're getting these calls, right? That didn't happen. So as of tomorrow morning, it'll be pretty clear if it's not already. I thought it was clear today. If it's not, it'll be clear tomorrow morning that both those items are in place.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So we're in open public hearing about the landmark nomination for 22 Chateau Terrace as presented by our Historic Preservation Commission. I have one question for the petitioner before we move into public questions and comments.
Go right ahead.
Regarding the property, by the act of nomination, do you set a period of significance?
An era significance?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the era of significance.
I'd have to review. I don't believe we had because
Okay.
the property was, most original materials were intact on most of the
Usually
property.
that happens when a property owner nominates their building, right? So
Right.
in this
This is a
case,
different case, yeah.
right? Okay, that's something that
But the way we looked at it was, all the original materials of the building were intact. So I suppose you could say,
so the stucco is original to the building and it's
far
just
as we
been
know.
maintained and patched.
as far as we know, yes.
Okay. The reason why I ask is, if obviously if it's landmark, the petitioner wants to modify it, they're going to need to establish a period of significance. So
That's right.
or an era of significance. So I don't know whose responsibility that falls back on at this point.
I believe we'd have to add it. So that's something we'd have to alter if it's not included in the application, we would have to alter that.
I don't remember seeing it.
I thought so too. I just don't recall it. I'm sorry.
James, I don't know if that's something that you could comment on.
Likewise, I don't have the exact one, and I don't want to guess in front of the town board tonight. But we can most certainly relook at the record and add that to the
I
record
think that's
going
something
forward.
that we need to, so again, with some information from Benderson to clock in, I would assume that we're going to adjourn this to the 26th for a decision, but it's something I would want added to the record before then.
That can definitely be done. Yes.
Is there a Historic Preservation Commission meeting between now and the 26th?
Next week.
Yeah.
Is that something you could take up then? Okay. All right.
I should note here on criteria A2, quote, the residence at 22 Chanteau embodies the distinctive characteristics of the craftsman style residence in the circa 1920 to 1940s.
So 20 to 40s craftsman with stucco?
Yep.
Okay, we're going to take other comments and questions. You have 3 minutes. I would ask you to come forward. Again, this is restricted just to the conversation about landmark and 22 Chateau Terrace. There is no sign-in sheet for that. It is first come, first serve. So please approach the microphone, and I'm going to ask you to state your name and address for the record as you come up. Are there speakers?
I did sign in, but I don't need to talk again. My name is Jessica Black. I live at 79 Fruhoff. I've lived there for over 11 years. I'm a mom to 2 small children, a lifelong Democrat, a minority small business owner, and a member of the Amherst Chamber of Commerce. I'm also the person who filed this application to begin with. I'm a founding member of our Neighborhood Homeowners Association. I began our neighborhood Facebook group and have been working tirelessly for over a year to organize our neighborhood's voice. Over 85% of the homeowners on Fruhoff and Chateau support our mission to historically designate this property. And the truth is, we, the neighbors, live here and care about our neighborhood. This home is a fixture of our neighborhood and deserves a chance at living up to its full potential, which it has not been given under previous ownership. Throughout the course of this discovery and learning more about our neighborhood and the history, through extensive historical research with my good friends at Preservation Buffalo Niagara, I learned the importance of this home and property. I learned about the history of Snyder, the history of Sour and Sour, as Sam mentioned, and the history of the town of Amherst. I learned that this home was built before much of the rest of the town of Amherst and was one of the earliest homes in the Chateau District when much of Amherst and Snyder was still rural farmland. In addition, I learned the history and significance of the Snyder Fire Department and Chateau Terrace in general. Many of the founding members lived on Chateau Terrace and Fruhoff Avenue, including Mr. Louis Ball, who resided at 22 Chateau Terrace, this home that we're talking about, as Sam already noted. You know, it's funny how life works. You don't really know the importance of something until it's brought to your attention. Much like that of 22 Chateau, I never realized the importance of this home sitting there uninhabited until it was threatened for demolition. And you'll note that Benderson says, like, we didn't care until they said they wanted to demolish it. Well, yeah, that's true, because it was fine as it was. I didn't think anything would happen to it. This home has ignited a passion in me for preservation and has pushed me out of my comfort zone. I encourage you to revisit the facts, keep this home, designate it for what it is for our neighborhood and how it landmarks our neighborhood on the map of Snyder. I really hope that you consider that. Thank you.
I was going to say,
Sorry about that.
no, it's okay, go ahead.
This is Lisa Dirdle. I'm here to comment on landmarking at 22 Chateau. And
Lisa, could you just state your address, please?
I'm at 92 Chateau Terrace. I don't want to get too close. Is this all right?
Yep.
That's better? Okay. So I've been a resident on Chateau Terrace for 31 years. And I mean, this is the first house that you see when you come down past the commercial properties onto my street. It's an obvious, it will be glaringly obvious if that house is missing. I can't even imagine, and the commercial property will encroach into our neighborhood right on top of our neighbors. We live halfway down the block. I'm very concerned about this, especially about 22 Chateau. I've been a vocal opponent of the Benderson, demolition by neglect, which has been happening here before in the town of Amherst and up at the end of my street with the Main Street buildings. I'd like to address the letter that you received February 5th, 2024 that you referred to, because I'm looking at the 4 points that the developer is trying to use to justify opposing landmark designation. So, number one, the town board would be setting a bad precedent by allowing people who do not own the property to seek and obtain landmark designation on property that they do not own. This isn't even pertinent because anybody can seek landmark designation. In fact, Benderson put in a landmark designation application for the Chateau Terrace district. They don't own any of those houses, so that argument is null and void. They submitted for over 70 properties on Chateau back in June last year. The second point, Benderson says that they retain Commonwealth Heritage Group, that Chateau Terrace does not appear to meet the state national register places criteria for individual eligibility, but they fail to acknowledge that the local HPC have criteria and authority on a local level to designate 22 individually. Number three, they talk about a letter on April 17th, 2023 from SHPO, New York State Parks Preservation and Historic Office. They state that the letter did not state 22 Chateau Terrace was eligible for individual listing, but did note Chateau Terrace Historic District is eligible for listing on state and national registers of historic places. And they're so concerned with SHPO's 22 Chateau Terrace individual listing that they're confusing the state level with the local level. My last point is their point 4. Finally, what prompted the request for designation for the house at Chateau Terrace 22 proposed demolition. I'm sorry, I'm just losing my train of thought. The property is nothing more than an effort to weaponize the landmark designation process and otherwise stop a code-compliant mixed-use project. Weaponization, if you want to talk about weaponization, educating your neighbors is not weaponization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. Mike Kozlowski, 60 Fruhoff. To carry on a little bit about that fourth point in the letter about how it's weaponization, I really think that the point that's being missed, and I think Jess put it very eloquently, is that when things are working okay, you just let them be. And then only once things are threatened and you realize the value of those things do you start to realize, well, what tools do I have in my toolbox? And I think we should rely on the town and the town's expertise in the HPC when they say that this thing is historic. You know, Benderson has some arguments, but like that's what the HPC is for, is they're there to either dismiss those arguments or to make a recommendation. And I'm proud that they made the recommendation that they did. I know that in the past there have been some complaints about this property. Specifically the fact that it was just like abandoned and nothing was happening to it. And maybe some years ago, I think before I was even a resident of Amherst, there was some discussion or grumblings from the neighbors that we should tear this down. And I think maybe the point that's being missed there is not necessarily that we want things torn down, but we want things revitalized. And if there's an opportunity to bring some new life into this house and save the character, that is really what people want. People don't want an abandoned, decrepit, falling down building. That's not the only option. Another option is to save it. And I think that this designation will really hold the current and future owners accountable, because I think the past 6 years of it falling apart and in neglect is really as good of a reason you can find why we need this accountability. Thanks so much.
I'm Jane Cox, and I live on Harlem Road in Snyder. The neighbors on Chateau have done a great job in researching this property and coming into a situation that they never expected to be in. Many areas of Snyder were developed in the 20s. They were building houses on Harlem, like mine. They were building new developments on Chateau and some of the other residential streets in town. When you go down Chateau, 22 Chateau is the first house you see. It is the gateway to their neighborhood as you come down from Main Street. The town and its historic survey rated it blue rated. Blue rated means it is the highest level of historic significance in their giant ratings book for town properties. That's one of the reasons why it should have been on the radar. A year ago, these concerned neighbors filed an application with the historic landmark designation for this house, not for the district, for the house. The house, as we all know, is being threatened by a huge development on Main Street between Chateau and Fruhoff that will be a 3-story apartment building with a 2-story parking ramp. The town's Historic Preservation Commission, as you heard, held a public hearing in August about 22 Chateau, and they determined that it meets 3 criteria for historic significance, when only 1 out of 5 of those criteria is required. And they voted to recommend it move forward to this board for your approval. Unfortunately, the developer decided to demolish the garage with no one's permission. Didn't ask historic preservation. He didn't get a demo permit. He just went ahead and had his people demolish the garage. The house, however, is still standing. So this is your chance to approve designation for the house to protect it. So we're asking you tonight to agree that the property is significant, as everyone has said, approve it for historic status. And because the developer's attorney submitted a last-minute package, an inch thick, today, which these folks have not had a chance to really look at or read, that if you are going to have another meeting to decide historic status, please keep the hearing open so that the public can comment in case there's some new material in there that they are not aware of, and they'll be able to comment on it at the next meeting. So I'm hoping you all support it. Thank you for listening.
Good evening. Bob Dirtle, 92 Chateau Terrace. Just want to say one brief thing about the property at 22. I've been on Chateau Terrace for about 31 years, and for most of that time, that house has been occupied. Since Benderson owned it, no. It's just gone downhill, but before that, there were multiple people living there for years and years. That's all I got to say. Take care of Benderson.
Good evening. Can you hear me? All right. My name is John Casali. I live at 23 Fruhoff Avenue, so my house is directly behind 22 Chateau. I just want to mention I'm full support of the historic designation. The property adds to the historic characteristics. It's the reason why I bought my house. Sorry about that. I apologize. I know, I'm a tall guy. You guys good? Hear me? All right, I'm good. All right. So again, I live behind 22 Chateau property. I wanted to mention my support for the historic designation. The property adds to the historic characteristic to the neighborhood. I bought my house because of this. Something important to me and my wife. I also just wanted to mention a little bit of anger I had regarding the garage demolition. My wife was mainly the one who confronted them in the morning about this. Not so much the demolition, but the fact that there was no fence, no safety. There was wood line just all over the place, as we all saw in the picture there. It was until after she had complained about it that they actually put up a makeshift fence to protect it from people walking around. She was mostly concerned because we have a child, as well as the property itself across the street from Mornhava, which, as you know, is a special needs school. So we just wanted to say, make sure that the safety was, compromised with this. However, last thing I wanted to say, again, like I said, I support the designation. Again, my concern with the fencing and the garage is unacceptable. I know they'll be fined about it for not having a permit to demolish it, but again, will they be fined for not following town codes and construction safety? So, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hi. Gerald Cantor, 930 Robert Road, Gettsville.
I'd like to forego the microphone.
No, you gotta talk into the microphone.
Okay.
It's live streamed.
Okay, all right. I will,
Back up a smidge. Just relax. The mic will pick you up. But
Okay.
okay. No.
A little closer.
In between.
Yeah, somewhere in between.
How's that?
There you go. Perfect.
Okay?
Yep.
Now, thank you. Pardon me?
Name and address again.
Again, please, because I didn't hear anything. Oh.
Oh, yeah, all right. I, in advance, apologize for any naivete. I, in general, get the impression in the town of development that comes to pass as being somewhat of a plundering, the word comes to mind, without assigning plunderer to any one individual. I would ask to consider before, in a general sense, a new development, to first examine whether all options of already existing structures, especially that if they have been laying vacant for years, you all in the community see when you go by, why is that empty? And it's that they're in good locations. Use that. Okay, instead of, I'm not a tree hugger, but, you know, can we save the trees a little bit? And the land that on Maple, that sign said, keep Amherst beautiful, and America, yeah. If we could abide by that, whether it's new apartments, new businesses, good jobs were done reaching back in the years, Maple Forest Theater, the Lord Amherst area, you done a good job. You got a place like the Boulevard Mall, it's just, you know, whatever long it takes or hurdles you got to go through, this is what I'm talking about. Instead of cutting down here, you know, slashing there of the environment. I'm not looking for Sherwood Forest, but, and to cite the game Monopoly in our youths, you don't have to put a house to win. Take pride in using what is here now. So I remember, and I want to point out a complimentary fashion when in a complimentary manner that I don't forget. The supervisor, when I first met, my God, and still is like light fantastic. I mentioned my background. There's a little theater in it. You want to teach kids over at the thing about, and I had priorities, obligations, but quick on your feet and your mind. And but you could assign that all into what exists, and that's what I'm here to address. And I'm going to wait for the bell in case I forgot something. Yeah, Brian. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Fred Lenz. I live at 64 East Chateau Terrace, and your sound system still is a problem here. I wish you would fix it. I'm sitting in the second row, and I can barely hear anybody on the board speak. But most importantly, I was born and raised on Chateau Terrace. I knew Mr. Ball. He might not have been famous, but I'll tell you what, he was a really nice elderly gentleman. And he was a firefighter in the town of Amherst, Snyder Fire Department, back when it was a little old brick building sandwiched between a couple of restaurants. And Chateau Terrace has a distinction of having quite a few first responders living on the street, close proximity to the fire hall. It's a wonderful street. The project that Benderson is putting in and kind of bullying their way by tearing down the garage now at 22 speaks volumes. They do not want to sit down and work with our residents to find out what's the best way to go about putting together a project at the top of the street between Chateau and Fruhoff. None of us are against a development there. That's not the case at all. None of us are against whoever would live in the apartments or the condos that would be built around the project. But the scope of this thing is just inspiring us to put our money into legal efforts, whether it's through this project at 22 Chateau Terrace to save it, and maybe perhaps tell the developer that, you know what, you're not going to bully us. They may end up doing what they're going to do, but it would be a darn shame. It's just overdevelopment for the top of the street. And saying that, I want to go back to Mr. Ball. I would deliver his newspapers. I had a newspaper route for the Courier Express. Great paper, miss it dearly. As I became old enough to drink, I would go to the Taiwan restaurant and catch up with all the great reporters of the Courier Express, because that's where they would go to get their strong libations after they put the paper to bed at midnight. But going back to the top of the street, Mr. Ball, deliver those papers every day. Sunday, I'd collect once a week $1.85. He always tipped me 15 cents. I felt like $1 million. So that being said, maybe he wasn't famous. Oh, one last thing about the property. It was always stucco that I can remember. And he always was very kind. So let's keep that in mind while we're working through this. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Christina Coyle-Lenz. I live at 64 East Chateau Terrace. And I'd like to speak about the garage that was torn down. I was coming home from work, and the day that I saw the pile of debris with that very half-baked orange fence around it, I had a rock in the pit of my stomach. Because I knew that that property is designated for historic landmark status. The garage is part of that. And the developer willfully went against your historic preservation process. They willfully went against the town board. And I understand that there are fines for acting outside of the parameters of, not having a demolition permit. You know what, though? Those fines for a company like Benderson are nothing. It's the cost of doing business. And I propose to you that you need to look at this as a way to protect Amherst. You have to look at this and say, if this is the behavior that developers will engage in to meet their own needs and to follow through on their own interests, you need to take some steps to prevent this. So the penalties match reasonably enough of a deterrent so that this doesn't happen again. I propose that they're forced to put the garage not back together, but to build a restoration. Thank you.
Okay, anybody further? All right, seeing none, I'm going to motion to adjourn and hold open the public hearing with a request that add the Benderson letter to the public record, and that the HPC consider adding a period of significance to the public record prior to our next board meeting on February 26th. And we'll add to that that I hope to set it, or I wish to set a decision date for that meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, see everybody for that one again on the 26th. The next item on our agenda is a continuation of a public hearing on Resolution 775, a special use permit for Tier 3 solar energy system at 800 and 850 New Road. On a motion to reopen the public hearing at this time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I'm asking you if you've got comments that further the conversation, just to keep them brief, but you may certainly address any changes or thoughts that have occurred since the last public hearing 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely. My name is Lee McIntyre. I'm a project developer with Sole Source Power. Since our last public hearing, we have agreed to additional conditions on the resolution, committing to working with Erie County DPW to grade and clear the ditches at the front of the property off of New Road. In addition to that, we have agreed to address and correct any legitimate complaints about drainage issues as a result of the project.
So I think that I'll just, from my standpoint, ongoing monitoring is going to be important. But the primary concern that I've heard from residents and the primary concern that I have are drainage on site, and so I think that it's going to be crucial that the town and the property, in your case, lessee, effectively have the ability to make changes if there is a problem with drainage that develops, and that's one of the reasons why I requested that addition be put in. Gonna ask any of the other town board members if they have any questions at this time. If not, we're still in open public hearing, so I'm going to open it up to members of the audience to come forward and comment again, or for the first time on the proposed special use permit.
Matt Plunkett, North Hill Drive. When this came up at the last meeting, I asked a question about what was going to be done to remediate the problem of sheep feces. I didn't hear anything about that. I gather nobody's given it any thought, or maybe you just don't care. I'm sorry. At the last meeting, I raised a question about what was going to be done to clean up the sheep feces at the site, because the sheep are going to be responsible for mowing the lawn. And nobody said anything about it, so I gather nobody cares and nothing's going to be done. If you're going to have animal-based types of operations like this or involved, there has to be an effective waste cleanup system. If not, you're running the risk of drawing rodents, runoff into stormwater. There's any number of problems associated with it, and nobody seems to care, and I'm a little bit perplexed by that. Anybody have anything? Well, it's Ms. McIntyre. Do you have any thoughts about that? Are you going to do anything about it, or are you just going to let it go? Okay, all right. You're going to answer? Okay. Well, I hope the answers include some of these things. What's going to be done for predator control? Is the area going to be enclosed? How often is it going to be checked? How many sheep are there going to be? Is there going to be weather protection? Where are they going to go in the winter? Odor control and that sort of thing. So I hope those things are going to be addressed. And I hope they are addressed, because if not, what's going to end up happening is this board will hire 20 shepherds at $100,000 a year to clean it up.
Good evening, Heidi Modern, 885 New Road. I'm a little short. Heidi Modern, 885 New Road. Mr. Kolpa, in September's meeting, you did discuss some very good questions and concerns about the project. One of them was a statement from the fire department. Resources, equipment, availability to deal with the fire. Has that been addressed? Do you know?
It has. They're going to answer all of this stuff in a minute, so I'm going to wait until, okay.
All right. So the board and the residents were concerned about the drainage and the flooding. Is there an actual new plan in place Sole Source said they were not changing the plan originally, and I just don't understand how it got this far. 25 years is a long time for this project to go on. Who is going to be liable if something does happen? Is it us? Is it the town of Amherst? Is it Sole Source, the developer? So the grid availability, you said was a slim capacity. Is it really worth the risk? Sole Source hasn't even given a guarantee, as far as I know, that it could be sourced to the town if needed. Sole Source has also been in business since 2021. How do they know the value and the marketability of our homes is not going to change? If we walk out our door and we see nothing but these panels, who else is going to want to? If the panels go bad, some of the parts are recycled and the rest is sent to a landfill. So they're going to end up in a landfill anyway. Why wouldn't they be built on a landfill? Looking up solar companies online, solar farms cannot be built on or near wetland or floodplain. Most of the sites I looked at stated that. In the special use permit, it states, nor will it alter the essential character of the neighborhood. How is it that 18-foot solar panels in 28 acres of wetland within 120 feet from the road not change the character of our neighborhood? And lastly, I go to the website, the town's website, and I see there's another solar project in the works for 1050 New Road. In their permit, it says pretty much about the same, but they also added there will be no depreciation of property values. If that's a guarantee, then why can't we get a guarantee for this permit? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sally Blazinski. I live at 905 New Road, directly across the street from the proposed project. I would first like to mention that on January 22nd, I emailed Lee at Sole Source asking for some backup documentation of some of the claims she's made to this board. She did get back to me saying she would let me know. I haven't heard from her since. So my questions for Sole Source are still unanswered. And I'm going to go back to August of 2023 with a town planning meeting that I attended. During that meeting, Sole Source was asked for information concerning toxic metals that might be in the panels or any of their equipment. They didn't have as many answers as needed to satisfy the board. The board put off voting until they could get the information from Sole Source. Yet a day or two later, I learned that that same evening, the board voted to approve the site. I would like to know what the board received from Sole Source that quieted that concern. I never heard anything more about the metals and the toxic metals maybe leaching into the water there, into the wetlands. Also, my understanding is the standard distance, the setback, is 1,000 feet. Why does Amherst setback for homes why is it 100 or 120 feet from our homes? During that meeting also, a couple of other important things in their approval letter. The board states that there's no ill health effects for residents. People live within 150 feet of thousands of solar panels. We would like to see the medical documentation that the board based that on. The board also states that the facility is consistent with the neighborhood. It's going to destroy our neighborhood. It's east, west, and south of the farm is all residential. It's homes. Sole Source was asked at a meeting I went to at the library about giving a property guarantee. They stated that if that was required by the town, they would not build on New Road. So they're telling us that there's no depreciation to the value of our homes, yet they won't guarantee it. The town is insistent on a bond for decommissioning on land that is not owned by the town. The owner that stands to make a lot of money off of the solar farm, he's being protected from the expense of decommissioning. We're not being protected at all. There's other things that the town board, they are saying that it's a farm. Let me just find this here. It passes the intent of the zoning district because a Tier 3 solar system is non-intensive farm. What is it growing? To be a non-intensive farm, you have to have a crop. I would like to know what the crop is that's going to be grown on that land. And these are things in the town of Amherst Planning Board, their criteria to pass this. What crop is being grown? Yet they're saying it fits that criteria.
Okay, we're gonna get some answers in a few minutes. I just want to let everybody else finish
Thank
questions.
you. I appreciate your time.
Sure. Thank you.
Hello, Jonathan Rich, 210 Smith Road. You guys have two things before you today. You've got a special use permit and you've got a seeker. I tried to keep my feedback on both of those things separate, but I kind of got things commingled. Referencing the seeker specifically, there's 3 different numbers provided for how many trees are going to be cleared. There's a table, I believe, towards the end of the permit application that says almost 6 acres are going to be cleared. 2 weeks ago, we heard that 2 acres were going to be cleared, and the initial application to the planning board, it says that 0.15 acres are going to be cleared. So I tried to look at the agenda. The document that's uploaded is unfortunately not clear, but I'd be interested in knowing exactly what number acreage of trees are going to be cleared. The application mentions grazing livestock. I've talked about this, and I think I sent an email as well. The special use permit mentions grazing livestock, but doesn't reference any sort of application for special use for those grazing livestock. SA allows personal use of certain livestock. You can't have pigs, you can't have cattle, as far as I understand, without a special use permit. So the special use permit, I don't know if that use is assumed by this current permit or if there would have to be a subsequent permit for those usages. The solar farm is directly adjacent to an upcoming development. The applicant noted that in their seeker, but then in the following section where it says, hey, can you define what additional development is coming up, they just left that section blank. They note that stormwater will run off onto adjacent properties, including mine, as a result of the project. I looked at some of the communication. Erie County sent an email saying that a SWIP would be required under certain criteria, and then I didn't see a SWIP in the agenda, so I don't know, I can't reference that. There's an area regarding surface waters and wetlands. In the seeker, it's incomplete. They state that there will be no noise from construction and that they will not be making any changes to any sound barriers. 6 acres of tree is a pretty significant sound barrier. There are about a half a dozen questions in the seeker. I didn't outline all of them here that just aren't filled out. So that's one component. I saw in the agenda that much of the community feedback from the August meeting was not in the agenda. I don't know if that was done for brevity's purposes, but there was only 2 letters in that agenda, and I know more than 2 individuals provided them. Both the county and the Army Corps outlined concerns about the application, and the Army Corps mentioned that there would be an additional subsequent permit in their feedback. The wetland delineation. So I provided you guys a novel, I think a couple days ago, and then a nice little photo journal today. This is the second time we've dealt with an earth dimensions delineation in this area. I'm glad Sean's here because he can talk about this. I'm concerned as to why the developers in the town use earth dimensions if they're so bad at delineating wetlands. An addendum to that, the DEC is taking jurisdiction of these wetlands as of January 1st of next year. I would encourage the board to consider postponing this project. The DEC wetland protections are much more stringent than federal wetlands, and I think that it would be a good thing for North Amherst. And if I could just finish, the stormwater issue in North Amherst is getting worse. I know that the county remediated a big portion of Smith Road, The area to the west is actually getting worse as the remediation is being done. That's all I have.
Thank you. More comments or questions from the audience before we bring the applicant back up? Okay, would you come back up, Sean? I don't know if you're all answering these questions or not. Okay. There's a number of items here. I'll start with the animal care. If you would address what your animal management plan is, please.
So we are working with a local farmer who will be bringing between 30 to 60 sheep
Can
to
you
the
hold
site.
the microphone over?
Sorry, I'm not as tall as some of the other speakers. We'll be working with a local farmer who will bring roughly 30 to 60 sheep to the site. According to that contract, they're going to be responsible for managing any of the waste on the site from the animals. Sheep feces does not attract rodents. They eat grass. That grass in their feces doesn't attract any type of rodents. The sheep farmer will be responsible for the livestock.
Okay. Can you address the fire department question?
We have a letter of support from the North Amherst Fire Department saying that they are equipped and ready to respond to any emergencies on the site. And that was submitted to the town board and planning department.
There's a question about plan in place for drainage. And I know that you have submitted a SWIP. I believe that's all part of the application package now.
Yes.
But can you talk a little bit about what your plan for monitoring drainage issues on and off site will be?
So first, I know that there are drainage issues on New Road. Erie County is addressing those drainage issues over the next few years. They do plan on getting rid of the ditches and installing pipes on the road. And that work is to be done, I believe, in the next 2 to 3 years. Do you want to talk about drainage?
Go ahead.
Mark Kenward with Erdman Anthony Consulting Engineers. The stormwater pollution prevention plan included a pre-construction and post-construction drainage evaluation, which showed that there was no increase in the rate of runoff from the site. It does flow off the site in several directions. The roadside ditches, if they do flood, they spill onto the site before they spill onto the road. The site frontage beyond the ditches is lower than the road. The stormwater pollution prevention plan was reviewed by the engineering department of the town of Amherst, and they are ready to sign off with the MS4 stating that they have accepted the parameters of the SWIP, and they're ready to sign off as soon as Sole Source prepares a maintenance agreement with the town for the stormwater practices. Monitoring will be by the report of deficiencies or concerns by residents and users of the road. We suspect that's how that will happen, and that will be addressed if they are attributed to our site, investigated and attributed. They're attributed to the site, that will be investigated jointly with the engineering department, I suspect, and addressed in accordance with the conditions of the special use permit.
Okay, can you address the question? So grid availability was a question I did ask back in September. Obviously, you have grid availability, otherwise you wouldn't be proceeding here. Do you have any idea what percentage of the grid availability you'll be using or utilizing for this project?
I'm sorry, can you restate, please?
So there's a limit on grid availability.
Oh.
I'm asking if you know what the percentage of that grid availability that you'll be utilizing for this project is.
I'm not sure of the percentage. The farm that we're working with is starting to establish themselves as sheep grazers specifically so that they can move the sheep on their current farm to other locations to expand their farming operations, but I don't have the
So
Did you say-
your intent is to sell power back to the
grid percentage.
Yes.
I thought you said herd percentage. Okay.
No, sorry.
So yes, the intent is to sell the power back to National Grid. I do think there's some misconceptions about capacity when we talk about capacity. When we talk about capacity in regard to the project, it's capacity for energy producers, not for energy users. So putting a solar project in and connecting it to the grid doesn't limit the capacity for demand in the region. That's a separate sort of list. But in terms of the grid capacity that's left, there's a very limited amount that's left. I don't think that our project fills the entire capacity of the nearby substation, but that substation is close to capacity.
Next question that we had was about liability. Who's liable if something goes wrong? To me, that's tied directly to the bonding question. You are providing a bond for decommissioning.
Yes. So the owner-operator is responsible and liable for the project. The decommissioning bond acts as a safety net for the town in the event that something happens to sole source or the owner-operator of the project. We are responsible for removing the project at the end of decommissioning. The bond is to be acted on if we don't fulfill our obligation.
A couple of the other questions that we had regarding so there was a question about crop, I guess, regarding the sheep they're going to be grazing on. Is it clover? Is it grass? What is the?
So there's a seed mixture that's been recommended by the planning department that we'll be using on site. So they'll be grazing on that, really grasses and pollinators and flowers. They graze in a pattern on the site, so sheep do not graze uniformly across 30 acres unless you direct them to. So there will be some sort of temporary fencing in the within the fence line, and they'll move kind of across and underneath the array throughout the grazing season.
Is the overall project fenced?
The whole project is fenced. There is a transformer pad at the front of the project that is not fenced. We're not allowed to fence that per National Grid restrictions and guidelines.
Okay. Regarding the seeker question with the number of acres that will be cleared, is that something that you can give us a definitive on?
The current information I have is there's 5.5 acres of tree clearing currently, and 3 acres of that is tree cutting only. The stumps will remain, and that 3 acres will, at the conclusion of the project, are going to be planted with some live what do they call it? Live.
You're going to plant trees?
They're going to be more like low-growing shrubs and grasses and things like that that are native to wetlands. There is about 2.1 acres of tree cutting and stumping. That's clearing and grubbing, and that is outside any wetland area. And there's also about 0.4 acres of selective tree removal, and that is to just remove along a western hedgerow taller trees that would shade the array. The idea is to leave trees that are 20 feet or less, so there is less shading of the array. No wholesale removal of hedgerows or anything of that nature.
The next one, I guess, is a question internally for Dan, from Daniel Latowski from the Planning Department. Is there a subsequent special use permit for livestock necessary on site?
Open uses are permitted in the SA district. the component that is required for a solar array in our essay. They are meeting that with providing a grazing service that they're utilizing to maintain the vegetation, and that's a beneficial component of this. Additionally, the intent is to preserve the land for future generations. It's prime farmland. By allowing this land use on our agricultural lands, it actually preserves our lands for future generations. It keeps the soils intact. All soils that are being excavated for the driveway and other pad surfaces will be maintained on premises in the form of 2 berms. But this is good for our community. It saves the site from future intensive developments, and it saves the soils for future generations.
Okay, there's a question about delineation. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Absolutely. We use earth dimensions for many of our wetlands delineations across the state. They're a reliable partner. They have worked between us and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who is taking jurisdiction of the wetlands on the property. We are not impacting any wetlands on the property. In terms of speaking to, so we are not impacting any wetlands on the property. A disturbance in an Army Corps wetland is removing stumps because that disturbs the soil. But tree cutting without stumping is not a disturbance. They're a trustworthy partner. We use them.
I'm not looking so much at EDR's qualifications. I guess the question I had is there an anticipated NYDC jurisdictional change on January 1st on this site?
They haven't been specific about what that change will look like. At this point, New York State DEC is not taking jurisdiction, and Army Corps has, we've received a jurisdictional determination from them that they are taking jurisdiction, and we've also received a letter of no permit required from them as well, because there's no disturbance of wetlands.
Okay. The last question I have here written down, I suspect you're going to tell me the materials have changed since the early days, but can you address the toxicity of the materials utilized in manufacturing of solar panels and solar arrays?
Yes, so the question that was brought up at the planning board meeting was about cadmium telluride panels. They're a type of panel that's used across about 2% of the industry and is declining. We have committed to not using those panels. They're not really commercially available anyways. We also provided documentation to the planning department regarding the types of panels that we will use, polysilicon panels, and there are no toxic chemicals in those panels. The industry as a whole is moving away from the use of those cadmium telluride panels.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all the questions I had written down. Are there further comments or questions from the audience? You can.
With all due respect to Ms. McIntyre, her answer about the sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So there's a rule about single approach to a public hearing. Is this a follow-up to a prior question?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm going to allow it just this. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. It is a follow-up to the question I asked, and I'll explain why if you want an explanation, because her answer to my question wasn't an answer at all. All she said is the farmer's going to do it. Okay. There's a contract between her and the farmer. You guys haven't seen the contract.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, come on. You know, how hard is this stuff?
I appreciate your question. Thank you.
Excuse me. Let me finish. They're a subcontract.
Okay. I
make a motion to call him out of order. He spoke once and he's done. Can I get some backup here? This is what we decided we were doing.
I asked for a clarification. You've offered your clarification. We're not allowed second approaches at public hearings. Thank you. I understand your concern, and it has to do with the depiction of the contract, and that's something this board can deal with. So I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
You know, I got to tell you, this is a heck of a way to run a meeting. You ask people to come up and comment, they come up and comment, and then you get the explanation, and there's no response to the explanation. What if the contract comes back and says there's nothing in there about feces control?
We can ask that be a specific portion of a contract. Thank you.
Yeah, but are you going to hold the hearing open, or are you going to close the hearing? Because if you're going to close the hearing,
I don't know what we're going to do yet.
Okay.
But we have the ability to add qualifiers to any decision this board makes. So
But if
thank
it's
you.
not subject to public scrutiny, that's meaningless.
Hi, sorry, I'd like to clarify one point. This is quoting from the New York State DEC website, January 1st, 2025. The current New York State freshwater wetlands maps will no longer limit DEC regulatory jurisdiction to wetlands depicted on those maps. Instead, maps will become informational, and any wetlands that meet the applicable definition and criteria will be regulated by DEC and subject to permitting regardless of whether they appear on the informational maps.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll submit that afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Tom Weisbeck, 48 Roberts Court. I just want to comment, about the solar. It's a farm. It's being called. It should be called a substation. If National Grid was putting up a substation, the neighbors would be, everybody would be in uproar for this. It'd be more complicated. It should be looked just like if National Grid was putting up a substation.
Okay.
Right? I mean, look at. Is it Air Road? Which you guys did that at National Grid? You made them, the town made them put up fences 20 feet high. You can't even see it. Everything underground. So this is really a substation being built in their neighbors, in the neighborhood. You'd be up in uproar. You'd cancel it.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Is there anything further on this? Yeah.
So I'm Christina Coyle, 64 East Chateau Terrace. And there are some risks of having sheep in areas. Sheep carry diseases, and most specifically, I'm referencing a page here, zoonoses, diarrhea, sore mouth, ringworm, injuries. There's issues with sheep, but the biggest one on this list, and the health risk to sheep it poses to pregnant women. So I guess hearing about the groundwater, hearing about the wetlands, hearing about all of the problems with this risk to pregnant women, it's because some of the same organisms that cause abortion in ewes can cause a woman to miscarry. And the most common causes of abortion in sheep are enzootic abortion, chlamydia, Vibrio, I can't see what that says, Campylobacter, and toxoplasmosis. Domestic cats are the common carrier of toxoplasmosis. Because of the risk, pregnant women should not be involved with ewes that are lambing. Now, the thing is a lot of people have cats, and a lot of times cats out in the country areas, they wander, they roam, they're mousers. It's just part of the country life of cats. So I think some of the questions that were posed by the residents that were not answered by the petitioner really need to be answered. And I also would propose to say that if you're looking at most specifically the contract, nothing should be approved without your seeing all the contracts. And actually, they're providing quite structured, formal, and solid answers to their questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything further? Want to approach?
Good evening, Sean Hopkins. So I represent the property owner, Samatos, and I just want to follow up on a couple of issues. Number one, in terms of wetlands, what we're proposing complies with current wetland requirements. Could wetland requirements change in the future? Absolutely, but we're complying with current requirements. that can be verified by the planning department. Second of all, in terms of questions relative to the grazing and the sheep, it's important to realize your code requires us to do that. It's not our choice. We have to do that. Now, there is a letter of intent that's been submitted with the company that will provide the sheep. And if you would like to put a condition that requires us to provide you with a draft of that contract for review and approval by the planning department, that would be fine. Rest assured, it will contain essential language in terms of making sure excrement is taken care of, the property is properly maintained. But we have to do that. We have to do it pursuant to your code. And then I also want to note, I believe this is, there's been several public hearings now. If you look at the code, which you've all done, it spells out in great detail what criteria apply to this particular project. We've satisfied those criteria, and that's just not our opinion. It's the opinion of many town departments and committees that have participated in the review process, especially the engineering department that looked at drainage and looked at all that information. The planning department has played an important role in the review of this project, required there to be additional tree preservation, additional landscaping, et cetera, et cetera. So this project has been very well vetted, and respectfully, we would ask that you close the public hearing and approve it subject to appropriate conditions. And I would note for the record, once again, you have added a couple of additional conditions since this was previously reviewed. We agree with those conditions. They're good conditions. So with that all being said, we would ask that you approve the requested special use permit. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything further? Any other comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, I am going to motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And there are a couple of items on the agenda pursuant to the solar special use permit. The first is the SEQRA determination on 800 and 850 New Road, SP-2023-01. I'm going to motion to adopt the SEQRA findings at this time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have the resolution 60, which is the adoption of a special use permit for solar energy project 800 and 850 New Road, SP 2023-01. For purposes of conversation, I'm going to motion the approval as it appears.
Second.
All right, on the question, I think I said on the question, I didn't say it was approved. On the question, I think that we have a number of items that we have added as conditions already. I do see that need to ask for the submission of contract with local farmer that is handling the animal care to be submitted and approved by our planning department prior to commencement of that operation, as I think that's a condition that needs to be added. I do think that there is a condition that, you know, where we talk about defining the acreage of clearing and the 3 acres of stumping, that there's a scenario in which there's brush added back where possible. I wish that would be actual retree. I don't know how plausible that is, if that's a solar alignment issue or why that's brush instead of tree. That's something that I would like the board to consider. Adding as a condition that retree as possible. I think that there is a need to maybe emphasize that the flooding or the stormwater conditions, the condition that was added for the active monitoring, that be not only for the condition along New Road, but that also be for conditions with neighboring parcels. I suspect that it be up to interpretation as it currently is, but I think we should spell it outright looking at our planning department for confirmation that that language is plausible.
Well, I have a question for our planning
So on the
person.
question, so those are three suggestions that I have. Just
Well, one of
to
those
even,
suggestions seems to fly in the face of the planning department discussions and actions. The landscape architect and the planning department worked on the landscape plan, correct?
We added condition number 2 for your consideration. We were concerned about the removal of trees within the federal jurisdictional wetland. It's not a permit activity that the Army has to approve. They can remove trees as long as the stumps are there and they're not disturbing the soil. We were concerned that there was approximately 2.1 acres of vegetative removal in that jurisdictional wetland, and we were concerned that it could negatively impact habitat. They did do a habitat study to determine what habitat was there, so we felt it was necessary that they have to restore those portions of the jurisdictional wetland that they were removing trees in and provide some form of habitat restoration, not necessarily just trees, but anything that would support the surrounding habitat.
Right, and that's already in a condition, so why would we add a second condition?
I guess I don't understand why there has to be, why if it's a jurisdictional wetland and they're not building in it, why there has to be 3 acres of stump clearing.
Some of the trees are dead.
Understood.
They may be able to answer some of the rest of it, but I have sat through about 10 meetings related to this project, and we addressed the trees.
I understand. I think that there's a lot of action that's been taken already in modifying the approval or the potential approval of this. I'm just, from my perspective, I think that there's some more items that need to be taken into account. So, I understand that the plan currently shows habitat restoration as they put it in the form of this additional planting. I'm asking if that can be wholesale tree instead of shrub, if there's a consideration for that.
So if I could be recognized, Mr. Supervisor, the planning board added a series of conditions as well. One of those was that pursuant to the glare study that the petitioner was required to do, it was indicated that 4 minutes out of the year there potentially could be glare. What we added as a condition that supplemental plannings be provided by the petitioner to provide interference screening after construction. So there's opportunities to look at screening opportunities and supplemental plannings after construction, which was a condition of site plan approval. So there are opportunities for additional trees to be planted on premises.
So I have those 3 items that I would consider amending the resolution, or I'll make a motion to amend resolution 60 to include conditions that we be provided with and ultimately our planning department needs to approve the livestock management plan. The second condition that we change the already added monitoring to include conditions along New Road and in neighboring parcels, and that we add additional trees, that we add a request to have additional trees planted as possible and determined by some combination of the petitioner and our planning department in place of those that have been removed or cut in the jurisdictional wetland. That's a motion.
Point of clarification.
Sure.
When you're saying the retreeing where possible, you still want the brush where it is not possible, correct? We're not taking the
Yes.
brush
Yeah,
out.
no,
Okay.
not trees in
Thank
place
you.
of trees in place of brush where possible, yes.
Thank you. Second.
So, okay, on the amendment, all in favor?
Wait a minute.
Oh,
I think we need to hear
You-
from the
I just want to make sure
respondent.
is this the same condition that Dan referenced? Because I don't want there to be conflicting conditions
They
from.
conflict.
Well, I'm not saying
That's
they do,
my
I just want to make
point.
sure they don't.
I don't believe they do. I believe it's a supplemental term to the same condition.
Yeah.
We're adding retreeing where possible, but the brush and the condition that was already added, if I'm understanding correctly.
that's what I'm saying, right.
We're adding
We have brush, we would like trees
Where possible.
where possible.
preference for retreeing first, brush where it's not possible.
As long as we can work that out with the town's landscape architect.
I said it was per agreement with the town planning department.
Okay.
So there's a motion, there's a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So the resolution, I'll motion the original resolution as amended.
Second.
All right, on the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, carries. Resolution 118 is a seeker determination on 2280 Worley Drive, BCPA 2023-03. I'm going to motion to adopt the seeker determination as it appears on our agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 58 is an adoption of a resolution to amend the bicentennial comprehensive plan of 2280 Worley Drive, BCPA 2023-03. A motion to adopt that resolution as it appears.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 119 is a seeker determination on 4774 and 4780 Sheridan Drive, Z2023-07. A motion to adopt the seeker findings associated with the project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On the resolution 957, an adoption of local law to amend the zoning map for 4774 and 4780 Sheridan Drive, Z2023-07. Going to motion first the resolution as it appeared.
Second, and when we're ready for discussion, I have a number of questions for the petitioner.
Sure, so we're at that point. So on the question,
Okay, I have questions written down. Hang on a minute. I lost them. All right. I did have an opportunity to meet with the representative from the, Mike, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. So anyway, he's the environmental consultant, and I've had a number of questions asked to me, and I looked into them. And I want you to confirm some things for me. So first, whoever wants to come first.
Let me address the board first. Councilmember Berger. Rob Savarino, 4758 North French. I am the applicant. With us here tonight is Tom Forbes. Tom is the vice president and principal engineer of RU. And RU is the environmental consultant that my company has hired to pursue this project. So,
So he's not Mike.
He's not Mike, but he's, even Mike said that Tom is more qualified to answer questions.
Okay.
So if it's environmentally related, I'll have Tom answer.
Yes, those are the questions that I've been asked, and I've had them answered, but I thought that we should have the public and the rest of the board have answers. What level of DEC cleanup are you looking at for the project now? And is it the highest standard?
Yes, we are proposing to enter the project into the New York State Brownfield Cleanup Program. It will undergo a Track 1 unrestricted use cleanup, which is the most aggressive and highest form of cleanup under the regulations.
Okay. How long will the cleanup take?
Once on site, it's about 2 to 4 weeks, weather dependent.
Okay. What's the process for supervision by your firm and the DEC?
The DEC requires that a qualified environmental professional be present at all times during the remedial work. We would serve that role as the professional engineer. DEC has the right to inspect the site at any time and oversees our work.
Okay. In terms of the current state of the site, what's currently happening with the contaminants that are there? Are they contained? Are they airborne?
The contamination is present largely in the upper foot of soil at the site. That does not meet the definition of containment under the regulations. They're effectively able to leave the site through dust formation or surface water erosion.
Okay, thank you.
So just on the question, I think that when you're looking at the project, I think that the remediation of the soil is important to the town of Amherst, that the project itself, as it carries the remediation, is important to the town of Amherst. I think that I don't hate the density levels of the project. I am still concerned about some of the setbacks on the project. I recognize that this is zoning and not site plan approval, but I do think that there is some. I'm specifically concerned about setbacks as it relates to the northern end of the parcel, and some of a couple of the facilities on the western end of the parcel. So I think that's something that we're going to have to deal with at planning board, no matter what. Again, this isn't a site plan approval. Those are my kind of initial concerns. I am, I think, more content with the soil remediation, although I'm not certain how much of that content's been distilled publicly yet. I'm asking, is everything we have been posted now? Sean?
The Phase 2 report was submitted months ago, and I don't know what's there today, but it's been on the website. Okay. It was submitted a long time ago.
Phase 2 has been published. Right. I haven't seen it on the web.
Yeah. And it is important to note that, remember, we've actually changed. Based on the input received, we've now agreed to the highest standard, which is the Track 1 unrestricted. That is new information, but that's in a letter that's on the website as well.
Okay. Any questions? Anything else on the question from this board?
I have none.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. We've talked about it on the record. I'm going to call for a vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I was going to say aye also. I don't know what that does at that point.
They don't have four.
So do we need a voice vote if there's dissent?
You just killed the project.
Well, I think that the reality is there has to be something done in terms of rectifying a couple of the setback issues.
But isn't that the planning board's responsibility and not ours? Because those conditions can be made?
I'm saying I'm recognizing that. I just think that I don't know how you could do it with the current density levels. So if we looked at it this way, could we amend the resolution to set a condition that the parcel, I think it's can you go to the site plan? Do we have the site plan available?
I do want to note the setbacks that we're showing all would comply with the existing R3 zoning.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, that's what the code requires.
You just missed my question. Is there a valid protest petition on this property?
Yes.
So, I understand that. I was surprised by the count.
It's a survey.
No, by the vote. I understand.
There you go.
So that set of property, the set of, can you, yeah, right there. So that, the issue I had is the three parcels along the northern boundary are not as, they're not a deep setback, the bordering parcels. They come actually relatively close. And the conditions that I am concerned about specifically are the 4 units that back up to those 3 parcels. I understand their screening. I understand the density there. Is the property viable if we modified the location or if we changed the orientation of those 4 units?
Can't be side loaded.
I don't envision they could be side loaded. And again, it does comply with the zoning today, the R3 zoning. And we've actually agreed to reduce the building height. So keep in mind, today, those 2-family units would actually be a very small footprint for a house compared to what could go there as of right. We're actually agreeing rather than 35 feet that our maximum height would be 30 feet. And I would also note that I believe it was Councilmember Lavin asked for us to provide some enhanced screening on the back. We've done that. It's not shown on this plan. So we get that we're gonna have to work.
The enhanced screening is depicted in the conditions currently?
Yes, it is.
And that, can you remind me what that's inclusive of?
Yeah, Rob, do you want to give a description of how we enhance the screening in staggered row?
So evergreen trees, a staggered position, I think it was 8 feet, 6 to 8 feet on center. So that would provide a taller screening.
Basically double the number of trees on the back.
Okay, so there's a 30-foot setback from those buildings to the property line?
Yes.
And then the setback to the northern homes is about equal to that? So
I
you're,
would say approximately equal, probably, Brian.
you have 60 foot between buildings?
At least, yes.
Taller trees.
Right, so more trees and taller trees have been added. And again, as has been indicated, ultimately, we have to provide a landscape plan prepared by a licensed landscape architect, and the town has a licensed landscape architect who has to review and approve that plan. We did show a concept plan, a subsequent plan that shows enhanced screening. Could we agree those are those 4 units? Those 4 units?
So,
Yeah, here. What would that mean?
yeah, I mean, I'm stuck here because there needs to be an impetus for somebody to clean the site up, right? We don't want to leave stuff buried in the town of Amherst. Legacy stuff that's left over from a nursery or not, it shouldn't be in the soil. We gotta get rid of it. At the same time, you know, that specifically, those setbacks along the northern edge are my concern. I don't know how, without getting into site plan approval here, basically, or how treading on that, we can deal with that condition. So I'm looking for a way to maybe say, you know, is there, and I'm not, you know, I don't know if that means, hey, we have to drop something density-wise, or if we have another opportunity to change the layout or the configuration. I know it's a tight site, but that's my legitimate concern on this, is that once we approve the zoning, that it's basically going to lock in a site plan approval, and then we're going to have that condition. So I don't know what you want to do with this one at the moment. I mean, I could motion to adjourn a decision. We have a motion, there's a vote, but
We have adjourned it 3 times already, I believe. I think,
I understood on the subject, on the issue, there, so
I would also add that if it means the properties facing there's 2 buildings facing the northern edge, we won't put a second floor with windows facing that side.
So it would be a single up, so second floor,
Like a
front
loft.
facing only?
Yeah.
Okay.
Front facing only, so we will eliminate the potential for, on those 4 units facing the northern property, no loft, second floor windows facing the northern edge.
Right. I think that would be a viable condition, that the lower floor, you would suspect the screening would be able to take care of that. The upper floor obviously would have a screening maturity issue there. So I'd like to see that condition implemented. So I need to, I need a point of clarification on a motion here. So made a motion, there was a voice vote,
The building members. Those are building members.
but
well,
we,
can we make a new motion
yeah,
with a new
I don't know
condition?
quite what to do with that one.
Motion to amend and vote on the new.
So if there was a condition where you said we would be willing to put second floor forward-facing windows only, no second floor rear-facing windows, that's what we're talking about?
On those 4 units, yes.
I'll motion to rescind the prior motion. Second. All in favor of rescind?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So I'm gonna make a motion as it was originally proposed on our agenda this evening. All right. On the question,
I have a question.
we're amending what?
What is, your amendment isn't addressing the issue you just identified. I mean, I'm okay with the amendment, but it's not the issue you brought up. It's not a density issue.
It has to do with the setback and the view shed.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And we're okay with that.
And admittedly, there's a property here that's currently vacated. It's an old nursery. There's contaminant in the soil. As a town, we'd like to remove the contaminant and have the contaminant removed. So that the consideration here is how do you do that in a way that, you know, keeps with the overall components that we're looking for, right? Which is to try to maintain the area as residential. I get it. There's not always going to be an agreement over overall density, but the opportunity to see something fully remediated, I think, is worthwhile. My concern was on view sheds. So I'm going to motion to amend the original resolution to include the condition that those units have second floor windows forward facing only and not rear facing.
Second.
On the amendment, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I'm going to motion the original resolution as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Okay, next item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is an opportunity for public expression. I'm going to motion to open public expression at this time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have 2 lists up here. I suspect there's a third list, possibly a fourth. I'm going to start in order as which they were received. So first is Frank Belliati.
Frank Belliati, 61 Old Lyme. I want to apologize to everybody that when I stood up for the salute the flag, I didn't take my hat off. I'm a veteran, but I've had some skin operations on the top of my head, and you don't want me to take my head off. I had an article in the Amherst Times. My subject was "Don't bite off more than you can handle." I had an article in the Amherst Bee last week when I talked about I live on Old Lyme, which is parallel to North Forest, which is an impossible street to do anything with. In fact, the DOT's been there for 50 years trying to do something. It winds, it's got 10 mile an hour, 15 mile an hour. There's a bridge, the creek is there. It's the eastern side of, the Westwood project, but however you would say it. We have a lot of pride in Amherst. Just whether we're hollering or quiet, there's a lot of pride in the town of Amherst. And the one thing we don't expect is that you can't balance the damn budget. And part of the problem may be that you're just doing too many jobs at the same time. Should we be in the LED business? Somebody else will probably talk about that. Do we need to move animals into Westwood property to create another zoo when there's a perfectly good one in North Buffalo, which ain't that far away? We're the first ring suburb here. And every time we have to go and fund and bond something, we put at risk our AAA lending authority with the banks. If I walked into the branch today and I can get a CD for 5% for something like 7 or 8 months, I can't imagine what the funding is on the other side to try and get a loan to do that. I think what we don't seem to be talking about, well, the Amherst Museum, the town of Tonawanda has one building. It's over there near the cemetery and the 290. The city of Buffalo has a magnificent building from probably 1901, and it's only a single building. We have so many buildings out there. I remember going out there and some hot dog stand had gone out of business. The sign from the hot dog stand was being put into the museum. I understand the Pony Express came to the Eagle House to have a couple of beers. I got that. But somewhere in here, and now to move it, I'm at a loss. It's like you made up something else to put in there. That wasn't for me, was it? I got a couple other things. It might take a couple of minutes.
Second round. It's a 3-minute limit. There's
I
a
think-
second round of public expression.
I think until you come up with some efficiencies on the other side, that's your responsibility. Don't come in and tell us you got this problem, you got to pay more taxes. Whether you got to come up with some efficiencies, they understand that in the stock market. I don't understand why they don't understand it here. And if you need a list, we can make a list for you.
Okay, Tom Weisbeck.
Tom Weisbeck, 48 Drawbridge. Sorry, Tom Weisbeck, 48 Drawbridge. Is that better? Okay, thank you. I have a couple questions from our conversation for the last time to the supervisor. One of the things was, you said you were going to, next year, you're going to have some savings on the streetlight. How are you going to do that? That's the question. I mean, we should all know how's this going to happen next year.
I'll address all the questions.
Okay, so part of when you decided to take over the street lightings, Did you look at all the options? There was an option, it's called opt-in, where Nagamawk, doing business as National Grid, would come in and change the bulbs for free, one bulb at a time. They wouldn't have to spend the $33 million and whatever it costs it is over how many years. I don't know what the figure that is. So that's all I got to ask you.
Oh, don't do that one. All righty. Go ahead.
Hi, Allison Segraves, 171 Amherstdale Road. I'm here again as a concerned citizen. I've lived in Amherst for 30-plus years. I raised 3 kids in this community, which makes me a mom, one of whom recently bought a house here, and I'll tell you that my 31-year-old daughter is the one who told me about the tax increase, which is why I started coming to these meetings in December. So I'm interested in ensuring that our town government operates with, number 1, integrity, number 2, openness, number 3, fiscal discipline. I became concerned in December when I learned of the non-transparent way that the 11.4% tax hike was approved. Like many citizens, I thought you had to manage to the cap. Per State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli, he says, as local governments spend down their one-time federal pandemic assistance, officials will need to carefully develop and balance their budgets for the coming year. I may add that balancing budgets does not include overriding the cap. I have since learned, and please anyone correct me if I am wrong, that apparently all that is needed to override the cap is 3 votes from this town board. 3 votes from this town board. In other words, with 3 votes, they can set the budget at any level they choose. Please correct me if I misunderstand. 11.4% is unconscionable, and I have since learned you have overridden the cap 3 other times under your tenure and proposed to override a 4th. I know you called it last week biting the bullet, but it's biting the hand that feeds you. I want that time added back to my time. Applause does not count toward 3 minutes. I'm educating myself on how town government operates in my spare time while running a business, being a mom, being a wife, and other things. I have shared with you my concerns about the Ethics Committee not meeting since 2020, and they are responsible for reviewing conflicts of interest, which, by the way, I want to thank the FOIL officer who in 7 days copied 96 pages of long-form disclosures from this board, the ones of you who submitted them. I am currently reviewing them. I know you assured me at the last meeting that you take this process very seriously. According to your office, no one has reviewed these, and according to my review, they look like they have not been reviewed. Finally, you have 2 committees that you're appointing people to, according to my read of the agenda. The Citizens Financial Advisory Board has not met since November 2019, and the Open Government Board since July 2022. Apparently, you are nominating the same people who have been on these boards or the Ethics Committee to be on these boards, and they have not met. So I think that you need people who are engaged in this community to be assigned to these boards. I volunteer myself. Thank you.
Matt Plunkett, North Hill Drive. I read some of the reviews of the State of the Town address the other day, and I was struck by one thing, and I'm glad to see we're finally going to reimagine Niagara Falls Boulevard and Main Street. I've spent the last couple of days trying to figure out exactly what that means. I'm not sure that's really a word. Sounds to me like it's a word that, planners like to use when they make it sound like they're doing something that makes them smarter than everybody else. What was the movie, Field of Dreams, where they said if you build it, they will come? Well, when it comes to Niagara Falls Boulevard, for sure, out around, the boulevard out that way, they've built it, so they're going to keep coming. I mean, I don't know what people are going to go there to shop. Of course it's busy there. It's probably the largest, most successful retail complex in Western New York. There's always going to be a lot of cars around there. You can do what you want to try and fix it a little bit, but you're not going to cut traffic down to what it was there before, because there was nothing there before, and now there is. That seems pretty clear to me. Let me put it this way. People like to use big words. Reimagining the traffic there now is like securing the agricultural outbuilding gate after the equine quadruped has absconded. And I just don't see where that's going to do the town any good. Maybe it'll help a little bit. I'm not so sure. You're going to. The one part that interested me is you're going to engage the community. Well, there's a novelty, with this board, pretty much on the whole, the presentation on the state of the town sounded to me an awful lot like equine quadruped feces. Thank you.
Joe Wojtowicz, 35 B. Cyrus. We've all heard about the $33 million for the LED lighting project. One cost no one has mentioned before, except the previous talker, is the cost of free. While looking into the background on lighting, I found a National Grid webpage entitled Upstate New York Street Lighting Program. Unfortunately, it appears that no one in the town had seen that page and scrolled to the bottom where they present their opted luminaire replacement program. I quote the following 5 lines from their program description. Number 1, all street lights eventually wear out and must be replaced. Under National Grid's replacement program, all inefficient lights will replace with LEDs at no cost. Number 2, the release date for this program was April 1st, 2019. Number 3, under it, National Grid will remove the failed HID lights and install new LED lights. Number 4, the company will continue to own the lights and be responsible for their operation and future servicing. And number 5, there is no capital cost to you for National Grid to perform this upgrade to LED under the opt-in program. Simple. Get free LED lights and save $33 million. You're welcome. Given that the old bulbs last about 6 years, if the town had signed up for this program in 2019, over 80% of the old bulbs would have been replaced by now. How did the board miss this? Of course, the consultants paid to analyze this project floated numbers all over the place to show how much money the town would save. I will do a quick energy analysis. 2/3 of the streetlights in the town are now on side streets and use 100-watt bulbs. Replacing these with 40-watt LEDs would save 60 watts. A streetlight is placed every 2 houses, so now the savings is 30 watts per house. Leave it on 12 hours a night, and your savings would amount to about 1/3 kilowatt hour per day. Congratulations. You've just saved 5 cents per house. But wait, there's more. National Grid will also reduce the town's energy bill by about 5 cents a day. So the town gains on that end too, on top of the free LEDs. Given that the 5 cents savings though, how is it feasible in any universe to pay back $33 million? Someone is not good at math.
Good evening. Dennis Hoban, 216 California Drive. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. Town of Board, Amherst Town of Board. It's a great pleasure to be here. Let's see, what do I want to talk about? I didn't write things down. I thought I'd just shoot from the hip. Don't worry, I just, figuratively speaking. Talking about credibility. Credibility. I looked it up in the dictionary. Something about truth, believing in people. This board has lost credibility. I was here at the last meeting. I brought up the point that in the December 2nd meeting, Supervisor Brian Culpa stated that there were 17 police officers that were hired by the town of Amherst. What he failed to mention was that there were 25 police officers that had retired. So he misled the public, just so you know, okay? And it should be noted that when those police officers came on duty and their first year, they were making a lot less than any of those 25 police officers that retired. Their pensions are vested by the state, all that money's there. So it actually saved, Brian, you listening? That actually saved, don't look at me like that, but they saved money. The town saved money. And you said that was one of the reasons you raised our taxes. Okay? I heard you on WBEN radio. You said, well, you know, there's inflation and salaries and wages have gone up. Well, if you're in a hole, stop digging. Okay? It's very simple. Stop borrowing money for needless projects, these insane projects you got going. The town of Amherst should not be a developer. The town of Amherst should provide services for people and its citizens. They should not be a developer. Let Benderson and the rest of them to develop. The other thing is, you said inflation. Well, why are you borrowing all this money then? If inflation is super high, why don't you wait another year or two and then borrow the money at a lower rate? It's stupid. So I think what we need to do is we need to have the State Attorney General's office start looking into these things. We should have, I hope that the State Attorney General's office is listening to me right now. Somebody recording this, please send it out, all right? Social media. The State Attorney General should be investigating the town of Amherst. In 2003, the city of Buffalo had a control board that came in because the city of Buffalo was really messed up. And you know what? So's this town. We should have a control board come in. You people should all be locked out of this building, and the control board should be taken over. They should take over this town. How's my 3 minutes going so far? Oh, the guy that came up with the red shirt, I just want to mention, you're absolutely correct, or maybe it was a woman, that said a fine for that house, that garage that got ripped down for Benderson. You're right. That means absolutely nothing to Benderson. You know that, Brian. Nate, right? You call him, not Nate? Not Nate Benderson? Okay. Thanks, folks. I wish I had 3 hours instead of 3 minutes.
Alicia Schreier, 79 Tristan Lane. I just want to make sure before I begin that I understand what just happened. Did we just vote yes for for zoning on Gleason's Nursery? Yes. I see. While I'm deeply disappointed in that vote, because I'm a longtime resident and a longtime taxpayer and I love this town, I'm still going to read my comments to you despite my disappointment in that vote. My street was once completely lined with big mature trees. Then the 2006 October surprise snowstorm destroyed many of our trees, and the town replaced them. 18 years later, our new trees are still small. Based on research, we are nearly certain that the mature trees that survived 2006 in the backyards bordering Gleason's Nursery will have their root systems sufficiently damaged by the construction to cause them to fail and eventually die, leaving the owners with the bills for tree removal. And if they replace that tree, we know that 18 years later, they will not have again what they once had. When we thought you would be voting this matter on December 18th, we asked the neighbors to come to that meeting and stand with us to show you we are against the rezoning of Gleason's Nursery. 32 neighbors came in person and showed by raising their hands opposition to rezoning. When we thought you would be voting this matter on January 22nd, we polled the neighborhood again with a paper ballot. More than 127 neighbors took the time to vote and drop off their ballots at designated areas. This was inconvenient for them because we were having back-to-back snowstorms at the time. All votes were against rezoning. These people felt strongly enough to bring their votes. Now they are counting on me to get up and speak on their behalf, to have the right words to say to you, to make you consider if this were your neighborhood, your backyard, your family being affected by potential flooding from sewer system Strauss, by loss of landscape and habitat, by having a brand new 30-foot wall in your kitchen window, because we know even 18 years later that proposed new landscaping still will not be mature. You wouldn't want it, and I'm saying we don't want it either. I'm not speaking for myself, but I'm speaking for all those neighbors who were hoping I could say the right things to plead with you to vote no for our zoning. This project did not need to be done. Please do not force it on us, but I guess you already have.
John Trabert.
John Trabert, 234 Mount Vernon Road. This is to the tax increase. Mr. Culpa had mentioned in the news media that the tax increase is due to several factors, including the following: the LED lights. That's a $33 million debacle that could turn into a $51 million problem for the taxpayers. Station 12, I have no idea what you're spending there. That's been vacant for 4 years. You can't get tenants for the area. The Boulevard Mall, that's going to turn into a disaster. The Westwood Country Club, you've got a lawsuit filed against you. We already have 32 parks, a bike path, and plenty of public school green space. There's no need for another park, and absolutely no need for another one the size that you want it to be. One other factor you mentioned was the increased salary and benefits for employees. If that is such a concern, why would you hire somewhere between 20 and 30 new employees since 2018 when you took office? I had requested from Mr. Culpa a list of people that he hired exempt or new positions, and he had failed to provide that. His assistant that makes $105,000 a year sent me an email that I should foil the information. I was able to get some of the information, If these costs are even close, that's somewhere between $2 and $4 million a year extra for the taxpayers. And that's at conservative estimates. I'm just wondering why, also, with the employees, why would you purchase the building at 30 South Cayuga for $1.1 million? I'm not sure if everybody knows that, but there's a building behind Town Hall that the town did buy for $1.1 million. Not only did they spend the money, but they took the building off the tax rolls. Why would this town board allow Mr. Kopel to get involved with such expensive and aggressive projects when you are supposed to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars? There's only 3 reasons. Can only be 3 reasons. Bad money management. How can you run a budget so bad that you increase taxes by 11.4% one year? That's just unconscionable. Egos. An urban planner was voted into office in 2018, and an urban planner is trying to push his urban agenda on a suburban area. The only other thing could be greed. There's no way that with all this proposed development that somebody doesn't have their hands in the pockets of the developers. Just one last thing. It's a shame that the fire marshal had to be here tonight to limit people getting in here. I think that we should change this to a larger venue. You really do discourage a lot of people from attending these meetings, and it should be to a larger venue. Thank you.
Good evening, Brian, Jackie, Sean, Michael, Angela. My name is Karen Howard, and I live at 194 Roycroft Boulevard in Snyder. I addressed you at the last meeting to express my disgust with the usurious 11.4% tax increase and asked what can be done about it now. Brian, you respectfully responded that you would be looking closely at budget lines to reduce them during the year. Subsequent to that meeting, when asked by the media about the situation, why did I not hear you respond that you will be looking hard to curtail spending? Are you not serious about your intent? Once again, you act like we are in the minority and that we will go away. May I remind you that you were all elected to represent the residents of the town of Amherst. Of course, I realize that different people have different opinions and it's difficult to come to a consensus. But I believe that most of us in opposition to your overspending actions are not politically motivated. We just want you to spend our hard-earned money prudently. Furthermore, I suspect that most of us are not racists, and we respect diversity in our town. I have a couple of questions for you this evening, one of which I posed to you in my email following the last town board meeting. My first question is regarding the proposed relocation of the Buffalo Niagara Heritage Village. I know that you have heard much opposition to this move, and frankly, I have not heard any support for it, and I sincerely hope that you will listen to your constituents and reconsider leaving the village at its present location. I understand that your reasoning for moving it is so that a building on the present village site could be used to store archive files. That sounds like a weak reason for such a drastic move of historic buildings and animals from a somewhat rural setting into a suburban setting that is approximately 1/3 the size of the current village. So my specific question is, have you evaluated the potential opportunity to transfer the paper archives onto electronic records? Many corporations have undertaken such an initiative in this age of technology. It's quite a project for the initial conversion, but would save the significant cost of maintaining a records storage facility going forward, and even facilitate retrieval of archived records if and when they are needed in the future. So I'm hoping that this may be a viable option, or that other alternatives can be evaluated to leave the village at its present location. My next question is regarding the streetlight project. It's obviously too late to stop that very expensive and questionable initiative, but my question is, have you sought any state or federal grants or credits to help offset the significant cost to us taxpayers, for which we will be paying for years? But perhaps maybe even more importantly is, can we sell them back to National Grid? How's that? These are just a couple of thoughts to start with, but I'm hopeful that you will sincerely reevaluate each budget line and identify appropriate savings that can be returned to us taxpayers. I know it's not easy, but it needs to be done. Finally, will you be transparent regarding this review process as you conduct it during the year to begin rebuilding the trust of the residents of Amherst? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dave Howard, 194 Roycroft Boulevard. I would like to address the Amherst Central Park. I am for the Central Park, not in its current format. I believe the location of the Central Park should be moved to the Amherst Golf Course, and the Westwood property be returned to a golf course. That property, Westwood, butts up to the par 3 golf course. We hire consultants to take care of the golf courses. Right now, they're driving back and forth across the 5-lane road, and all we have to do is move that golf course to a golf course that's already there. Yes, it hasn't been used in 10 years, but it can come back, and it would make easy transition for that company to take care of both places, and we have the bike path that surrounds the Audubon golf course that's there now. What an easy transition to take that whole bike path and incorporate it into the Central Park. I mean, it seems ludicrous to have a Central Park over here, a bike path over here, a 5-lane road between it, when you could just put it together. The town parks department, their garage is right on that property that the golf course is on. They come right out of their building, take care of the park. They're already taking care of the bike path. So you're centralizing how things are taken care of. So down the road, everything will be done easier. I mean, I don't know if everybody knows, but the Parks Department, what they do every day, they drive to North Forest, to the Highway Department. They pick up the town vehicles there, drive over to Maple Row, or Maple, right by the golf course, and pick up the lawnmowers to put them on the trailers, and then they have to do the same thing in reverse. It's so much waste in the Parks Department. If you just combine it all, it can all be done right there. I just don't understand separating the two. It just doesn't make any sense to me. That's just would like to. Well, I think he does care, somewhat. I just think, I mean, and the other thing is, it gives us the ability to have a nice golf course for all the residents in the town. And the residents that play golf in the town are not all, a vast majority of all different races, genders, everything is there. So, I don't know, I just think we're making a big mistake. And nothing's been built yet, so we still can do it. Thank you.
Jane Cox, Harlem Road. I didn't prepare any notes or anything. I just thought I'd wait and see what happened tonight because I knew there would be a lot of opinions in this room. We are still having the problem with sound. Your directional mics on the podium that you all use are the same ones that committees use. A lot of people don't know enough to turn them on in committee meetings, therefore their comments never show up. You guys are pretty good about it, and your comments show up on the audio portion of the recordings. This microphone is terrible, but I think part of the problem is normally you either have the heat system running or the air conditioning system running, and it creates too much noise in the room. When the cable companies stopped doing live recordings for broadcast television, the town got money from the cable company for improvements to this room. I assume you're still getting payments from the cable company to use for improvements to this room. You've taken out the extra seating. Now we're using folding chairs. There's less seats for people. Now we have more people. You need new microphones. You need a new sound system. Spend the money. People cannot hear. They're getting very frustrated. Even if you sit in the front of the room like I normally do, you still can't hear. There's too much ambient noise in the room. It's got to stop. You know, just people are getting angry because they can't figure out what's going on. Thank you.
Good evening. Mark Rivard, 132 Fleetwood Terrace. Little irony to the last person. I could hear her clear as a bell because she was the proper distance from the microphone. Good job, because that's half the battle. I have a question about the country club, Westwood. When it was privately owned by Mensch Partners, and they started parking all the dealer cars there, and I'm sure making some money, and I think that's a great idea for them, goodie for them. I see the cars are still there. How much are we, the town, getting from the car dealers that are storing all those cars there 5 years or more? That's a lot of car space. I hope we're making some money on that, and if you could enlighten me on how much. Million other topics, but people covered them pretty good. I'm really amazed that we didn't get a chance to public comment on Gleason's, that was just a vote over and done. And I thought the developer said it's still R3, and I thought I just heard you say now it's R4, that you today approved it to go to R4? Is that a fact? How come we couldn't hear it out there?
There. Okay, go ahead.
Well,
keep going.
okay.
I'll address
No,
all this.
actually, I'm done. My only distance to the microphone is critical. Half the time I can't hear you because you're too far from the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Geralda Cantor. Gerald A. Cantor, sorry. Okay. Janet Lenchik. Lenachek. And then Sarah Schultz is next after that.
Hello. Janet Lenachek, Mill Race Court, Williamsville. First, thank you Supervisor Culpo and the entire town board for listening to every citizen who has chosen to speak up and for keeping yourselves relatively calm despite the anger and in some cases vitriol that has been expressed by many town residents in the last few meetings. No one likes their taxes to go up, especially by double digits. Even people who generally agree with the town board and Supervisor Culpa in terms of, in general, about their governing. I understand that town personnel costs are largely responsible for the double-digit property tax hike increase. Those costs for salaries and health care benefits are unlikely to decrease anytime soon. So the town needs to be considering a variety of ways to decrease other costs over the coming years and decades. Saving tens of millions of dollars on energy costs will allow the town to budget far less money for energy. And the money saved on energy can then be used to increase the budget lines for things like health care for staff or salaries when justified. Second, I commend the town for making the conversion to LED streetlights, since this is the type of investment that will result in energy cost savings for Amherst taxpayers for many years. This year, I want to see the town accelerate their investments in other energy-efficient technologies that will help reduce energy usage, air pollution, and carbon emissions. These types of energy technology upgrades will save taxpayers money over decades to come. 2024 is the year to start making these investments. While New York State and the federal government are offering tax credits and rebates to local governments, I don't want Amherst to lose out on these financial incentives that could save taxpayers money. Here are my questions for the supervisor and the board. Number one, several municipalities in Western New York have developed plans for sustainability, climate action, and climate mitigation, including Erie County and North Tonawanda. Is there such a plan for Amherst? If not, I strongly recommend that the town develop one this year. Otherwise, you will not be prepared to take advantage of many grants and tax incentives, rebates that are available from New York State and the federal government to improve the energy efficiency of our town, especially our buildings and fleet vehicles. Number two, is there a person within town government who is currently in charge of sustainability and climate change mitigation? If not, someone needs to take on that role in order to start the ball rolling. The town of North Tonawanda was able to write their plan within 6 months with the help of UB's Regional Institute. The town should take advantage of this professional expertise to help them expedite the process. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
Sarah Schultz, North Cayuga Road, Williamsville. There has been a lot of understandable emotion over the tax increase. I get it. But I'm also upset that there were accusations made that were unwarranted against our electeds. I've worked with these dedicated public servants on 2 town committees for 10 years. Even if you disagree with their plans and policies, which I respect, please respect that their intention is not for personal gain, but for well-functioning. I've been booed before. I don't care, you can boo me all you want. Please respect that their intention is not for personal gain, but for well-functioning infrastructure, a balanced budget, which we do have this year, and a thriving, progressive community that we can all enjoy. Let me speak. Okay, okay. Can you hear me now? It's better? Do you want me to repeat what I said? Can I have my time back? Okay.
Just keep going, Sarah.
Okay. One of the goals of the Energy Conservation Citizens Advisory Committee was to become a NYSERDA clean energy community, and eventually, like many other local municipalities, including the Village of Williamsville, a climate-smart community. Through that program, we started working on energy efficiency measures, EV transition, and ran a successful residential solar campaign. From that, we were granted $250,000 and then another smaller grant for a plug-in car with a dual level 2 charger. In 2017, can I speak, please? In 2017, we started looking at LED transition. This would also help us win future grants as a big action item. We learned that we would reduce streetlight energy by as much as 65%, generating significant cost savings. We hired Wendell Engineering as a consultant, and the cost-benefit projections of the project were a no-brainer. This is happening in municipalities, large and small, all across the country because it makes sense. LA County would not have transitioned 70,000 streetlights if they weren't saving millions of dollars. There were also questions about the health and safety of LED street lighting. With greater control of intensity and direction, there is superior visibility. With LEDs, our sidewalks, streets, and parking lots are much safer. There is no mercury in them as in fluorescents and no harmful EV rays. These lights are recyclable. For nature lovers, you will be happy to know that the darker skies and more natural light comes from LEDs is a boost to birds and wildlife. In addition, as we move towards a more sustainable community, these poles can actually make money for the town. EV chargers can be attached, data collection for cost reduction measures, and traffic light controls are positives of these smart systems. Why would we not want the most efficient and advanced technology? Does anyone still own their first cell phone or a 10-pound computer? I personally want leaders who care about the future and have the vision to get us there. LEDs, solar EVs, and efficiency measures are not only cost savings and sensible, but they're a moral imperative. If 99.9% of your doctors told you that you had a terminal disease, you would do something. Well, 99.9% of our scientists are telling us it's time to do something about climate chaos that is already costing New York taxpayers billions of dollars for catastrophic weather events, and this is a fact. It's time, I don't know why you're laughing, because it's your money.
There's the second bell. All
It's
right,
time
Sarah,
for our
thank
children.
you. Okay. Enough! Hey, you guys, you're allowed to focus at us. You're not allowed to focus it negatively at one another. Everybody has the opportunity to speak. Chris Strungoski. Chris Strungoski. Is Chris still here? Chris.
That's a tough act to follow. Chris Strungoski, Youngs Road. I want everybody to listen very carefully about Westwood. And I want you to go home tonight or tomorrow and listen to the workshop session on YouTube and what the supervisor said. I can't believe it. I wasn't even going to come tonight, but what he said, I want to call him out because you need to be called out. You stated that the brownfield scenario at Westwood was contrived. You said that. Now, I know what the definition of contrived means, but I looked it up because I Googled it because I wanted to make sure, because I can't believe that he would say that. Deliberately created. So what he's saying is, Mensch conspired with soil engineers and experts, engineering firms, to fraudulently get Westwood into the New York State Brownfield program. Contrived, you said it. Now he also stated that the property's been tested and the results came in really well. Well, according to all the reports, the CS Engineering, the Stanek report, it doesn't state that anywhere. Matter of fact, what he's trying to go for, and I'll tell you where he's heading with this, is he's going to try to tell everybody that the property bordering North Forest and Sheridan, where golf never occurred, is clean, and it should be clean. That's where he wants to put the ribbon, the ice skating ribbon, and the winter market. You're in a lot of lawsuits. You bailed Mensch out, so they probably won't sue you for defamation. But to call that a contrive when all the reports are prepared, New York State DEC is ready to come in and start testing that property. Limited testing. They're not testing the entire property. They're doing a limited amount on 19 acres. And most of that is that property up there, that North Forest Sheridan intersection there, where tennis courts will be negative because it was never a golf course. You wouldn't fertilize that area. This is just another stunt in this whole plan. With regards to parks, he made a statement that everybody wanted a park. Well, let's define what a park is. You go right around the corner on Harlem Road, you have the Federal Park. Beautiful park, one of the finest parks the town has. It's just a walkway. How about Saratoga Park? Very inactive, quiet park. How about Nature View Park? Another quiet park. So now, when you say the people wanted a park, we wanted something similar to those parks. The fact is, you could bring that golf course back. If this was all contrived and this was all bogus, and those signs were up there for a decade saying it's a brownfield, if this is all not true, it's far less expensive to bring that facility back as a golf course. It's approximately $16 million. And you're right, everybody's going to say, we can't afford $16 million. But look at it this way, with the original plan, $16 million to bring that golf course back. You could sell the back end of the Audubon property as a medical complex.
Okay.
You've already started with UBMD.
Time's up.
I want to hear what you have to say about contrived, please.
Okay, thank you. Julian Macy. Is Julian here? Okay. Bob, yeah, well, I don't know, Bob, do you want to speak again on Chateau? Just a demolition. No. It's not Bob. And then Shelley Schratz, you're next.
Shelley Schratz, Kensington Avenue, Amherst. A lot of stuff has been said tonight. And a lot of people are just angry. And you know that. We all know that, for lots of reasons. I was watching the board and I thought to myself, who's the liaison to the historic preservation? That's just new, though, so you just came. Who was it before? Debbie?
Yes.
Okay. The fact of the matter is there are so many projects going on in this town, and you are not meeting. You are not having meetings with residents. And that is not doing your due diligence. And I know how busy you are, but that is number one responsibility when you got elected to this position and you got appointed to those positions. Everybody blames it on whoever, whatever, whoever else. But that's your jobs. And you need to report to the people when they ask these questions when it pertains to development and things that affect their backyard. And you're not going to be liked for your responses. But I think if we were more transparent, transparent, that resolution you did, which, all due respect, it sounded good, but it's a farce. It's a farce because of when it took place, how it took place, and how to this day, nobody knows anything. But Brian, you know, I got 2 notes today from single moms. And they sent me their bills for after school so they can work. Single moms. $18,000 a year. So mom can put food on the table. I got a call from a few people in different towns saying, well, geez, they did a moratorium on development in this town. We need a moratorium on the Westwood project. We need a moratorium until we figure out how our moms are going to put food on the table. How are our senior citizens going to figure out what they need? We can all roll our eyes, but when I listen to the Chamber of Commerce, who I was a long-term member, proud to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce, going to those meetings. I've got awards from it. Okay, great, terrific. And then I heard Brian mention the Huntress Project again for being sued. Sean, I'm directing this to you. You did a resolution on transparency. This project, the reason the town owed millions of dollars is because there was no transparency in the 90s, and it was shoved under a rug, and it cost $5 million. The lack of transparency is taking us in that same direction. But then to hear some news report that the Westwood people, or the people in these neighborhoods, I don't want to say they're racist, but you said it, and it went into the paper. Excuse me. I have children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews from all different races. I'm not going to stop until I'm done, and I promise I won't be offensive. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to say this because of what you said. No, because my phone hasn't stopped ringing. Okay, so you used the word racist. You opened a can of worms. And then Mark Polenkars has the audacity at the Chamber of Commerce to say that we're eccentrics. We're all of this. No, this has to be said. So the people here, all right, arrest me. Okay. I know. Don't point your finger at me because I'm irrelevant. I am irrelevant. I get it. And one day, you will all be irrelevant, like the rest of us. You're welcome. Do something. Thank you, Angela. Today, you stepped up. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. That's the last on the list. Is there anybody else? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Keith Bailey. I live on Hopkins Road in Gettsville. My address to this board is not of the nature of what has been already discussed and everything else. My comments here are just an observation of the last 2 meetings that I've attended. Okay? Number 1, Ms. Berger, you're scribbling and hand scratching while people are trying to address this board. While people are trying to address
You're not supposed to address individual board members. It's as a board.
Okay. My observation is that you spend no time making eye contact to the person who's speaking to you, and you spend your time making scribbles and hand scratches, making eye rolls, getting exasperated. In the last meeting, sir, you got up and walked out the door. I really was kind of hoping, and I think a lot of these people were hoping, that you would have walked out permanently at that point. You represent the people of Amherst, the people that are showing up at this meeting, the people that are expressing their concerns about their homes, their neighborhoods, their environment. Whether it's a tree, a golf course, a street light, it doesn't matter. What you should be doing is listening to these people, making eye contact with these people so that they can see that you are being sincere in listening to what they say and not belittling, not calling them racist, not making derogatory remarks.
Not raising their taxes.
Some of the people were called irrelevant. Really. Your taxpayer is ones that are paying your salary. We are not irrelevant. We are not racist. And we are not going away. Okay? You need to listen to your constituents. You need to listen to the people who are trying to tell you you don't need to make a new golf course. You don't need to make a huge project or convert a golf course into a glamorous park at a point in time where you tell the constituents that you need to raise their taxes 11.4% in order to do that. Because we don't want that. We don't want that. Take a look at your spending, make the cuts in the spending, and why don't you give some of the money back to the people instead of taking more away?
Thank you.
Very much for your time.
Be on our level.
Deborah Croning, 1221 North French. While I've been in the town of Amherst, it's about 35 years, I have been both a registered Democrat and a registered Republican. This is not a political thing. So please do not try to pit one group against the other. This is not political. You might see some empty seats here right now. It is after 10 o'clock at night. Don't think that only a small fraction of the people of Amherst are upset about things happening here. There are people who work 2 and 3 jobs. They can't come to these meetings because they're caring for small children or their elderly parents. They're simply tired and they're working hard and they can't always come. And they hear that when they do come, there's not even enough seats and they're standing against walls or they're being denied to even come in. So don't think this is a small sliver of the town. It is much larger than that. On the lighting, I might consider myself an environmentalist. And let me tell you, replacing all those bulbs, that is not environmentally friendly. A true environmentalist, if you care about the environment, you would use those bulbs that are in place until they burn out and then you replace them. That's what, if you really care about the environment, that's what you would have done. You don't pull them all out and throw them in a landfill. On the Westwood project, the initial idea was this was going to be a green space. And it has turned into like Disneyland. And this is not what we ever envisioned. And I am personally very insulted by comments that were made about our town being racist. And I think the entire board should hold each other accountable, and a sincere apology should be made to all the town residents. Yes, absolutely, a public and in the media as well. That's like grasping at straws, trying to get your point across, trying to make a point, and rolling your eyes. And board members that sit there and laugh, we can see you from the back. You're laughing and smirking at our comments, and that is just really, it's unprofessional. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Morganti, 253 Woodshire Court. And I would just like to acknowledge that this is Black History Month. Thank you.
It'll be good morning pretty soon. Good evening. My name is Paul Francavilla. I live on Cimarron Drive. And in case you don't know it, Cimarron Drive runs from Hopkins Road to South Wedge. We've been there since 2004. We've had a water main break every year since we've been there. Okay? I called the town of the Erie County Water Authority to get an idea how many water main breaks there's been. Since 1984 to present, there's been 35 water main breaks, 3 valve leaks, and 1 service repair. This is ridiculous. The street's a half-mile long. 35 repairs. I've talked to the Erie County Water Authority employees, and they says that they're told by the town to fix. Don't replace, just fix. And after 40 years and 35 leaks, maybe we should replace. Okay? That's my 2 cents.
Can you hear me? All right. Eugene Civic, 34 Wick Street. Edmund Burke, the political theorist and conservative philosopher, stated, "The only thing necessary for triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Well, I'd like to add women to that also. So if good men and women do nothing, this is what we get. And I would say the same thing whether this town board was all Republican. It is not good to have a town board or representatives all of one party. And we have all of one party right now. Government on all levels, local, state, and federal, have forgotten that it represents we the people. On 16 December 1773, a mere 250 years ago, the people had a tea party, and not a social one, in Boston. We the people of Amherst are tired of not being heard, whether it be the Westwood Project, Boulevard Mall, moving the Amherst Heritage Center and Museum, to name a few. If you were so confident that we the people of Amherst supported these endeavors, why did you not bring them to a referendum? Because you know they would have gotten voted down. Mr. Lavin, Mr. Zakala, and Ms. Marnuccio, you are all employed by Erie County as Deputy Commissioner of Personnel, Medicaid Inspector, Senior Services Commissioner, respectively. I'm sure there are Erie County items that may come before this board to be voted upon. We the people would expect, in fact demand, that you recuse yourselves from voting so as not to give the appearance of a conflict of interest on your parts. With your recuse, this board will not have the required quorum to pass county-related proposals. By not recusing, you can open yourselves to ethics investigations. A watchdog group of concerned citizens of Amherst will be empowered to bring attention to any county-related subjects on the town agenda. In closing, as John Paul Jones, American naval officer during the Revolutionary War, stated, we have not yet begun to fight. And those of you that are disgruntled with this board, whatever your party affiliation would be, I would invite you to the Amherst Republican Committee meeting next Monday night on Worley Drive at the George Lamb Post. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Heidi Zemer. I live on Reese Street in Amherst, and I just have 2 questions. Heidi.
Thank you.
And I just have 2 questions. One of those is directed to Town Board Member Sean Lavin. You were invited to a meeting with the building department with myself over property variance for a garage that was built on my neighbor's property in my backyard, which is now literally in my backyard. And you didn't show up for the meeting. I stopped by your office, left a message, you did not respond. I emailed, you did not respond. I called, and you did not respond. Where were you to represent me in that discussion? Second question for the whole town board is, how can you trust the person who's representing that country club, now Disney, property development, when he's the one who's putting this garage up and is violating the variance that was granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals? How can you do that? How can you trust somebody like that? Thank you.
Hi, again, Mike Kozlowski, Fruhoff Ave. I'm Mike Kozlowski on Fruhoff Ave. I'm ready to get booed by this crowd. I think the decorum in this room tonight has been atrocious. I think it embarrasses me as a resident of this town. I think, case in point, I think the fact that people can't limit themselves to 3 minutes, they don't believe in equality, is really embarrassing, and I hope that the town board can do something about that. I love the streetlight project. I think it's fine. I have no problems with it. I don't like golf, so the fact that we're taking Westwood and doing something with it that's not golf sounds great to me. I do have concerns about the money that we're spending and the development on it and the tax hikes, of course. I think all of us here have grievances that perhaps we can agree on, but we can be civil in how we discuss them, and we can be civil in how the town board responds to people. I think I want to just take a couple of seconds of quiet, deep breaths, and enjoy a little bit of peace for a moment. Thank you.
Don,
I didn't have my name on the list.
we're past the list at this point.
Sorry, I'll make it quick and simple here. Jim Geiger, 102 Nicole Court, East Amherst. Is there any update on how we can improve the cell service out in that area? And I know that it was brought up, I was at the Town of Amherst Chamber meeting the other day, and it was mentioned briefly. But I've contacted Verizon, I've contacted T-Mobile, all of them, they all say, oh, we got coverage, but there's definitely an issue out there. You must be aware of it, right? Okay. I know there's been a lot of negativity here tonight. I haven't been to a town board meeting in a long, long time. And as some of you may know, or maybe the audience knows, my father and I started a restaurant concept years ago in the town of Amherst because we wanted to be here, called the Four Seasons Restaurants. And we built on Kensington and Snyder, Maple Road, Williamsville, which is now 800 Maple, and out by the Boulevard. We've had nothing but positive experiences. But I remember being at the town board when Jack Sharp was here, probably before a lot of you people were even born. But it's been a great experience. The town at the chamber the other day was a very positive experience. And I'm sitting there looking around at the Reichert House. And I remember what that developer went through with the town and with the neighbors. And it took a long, long time. And what a beautiful crown jewel it is today. That hotel in the back is amazing. And I think for any of the people that are here tonight, if you've never been there, you should go there. Not necessarily eat or drink, but just to look at it. It's really something. And I've experienced that myself in building restaurants. I know there's a lot of pushback for different reasons, whether it be drainage, whether it be some of the neighbors don't want this, don't want that. But I know that as things move forward, things change. And sometimes you can't help it. That's progress. And I know that some of these projects on Main Street are going to be much better. They're going to be improved. And the sooner that development gets done, they're going to start paying taxes. And that's a positive thing. So that's all I want to say. Good night. Thank you for your work.
Okay. Jim. Don Smith.
Good evening, Town Board. My name is Don Smith, North Long.
I originally came here to look at Resolution 224-133 until I found out that it was put off till essentially next week. But it's an extremely important one, and it has to do with the Amherst Central Park and the contamination. And I'm interested in what kind of reporting is going to be done and how the public is going to be able to see the reporting in progress as it is happening. I also listened to one gentleman who said that this town board is a place for people to come and be heard, have themselves heard, and be heard, and have their opinions out here.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, can you hear this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I heard one gentleman say that this is a place where you should be able to come and have your opinions heard, and they want to be heard. Everyone here wants to be heard. In fact, you cannot not hear them, all right? So they want to be heard. They're saying everything they can. And then I saw one thing that hurt me very badly. I saw a fellow resident here booed down and not allowed to talk by a bunch of people who are angry at hearing something they didn't like. How are we going to be heard if we start yelling at other people who have other opinions than your own? Listen and don't yell at people who have opinions you don't like. It's time to be civil to everybody, including yourselves. This is not the time to hurt other people who are residents. Don't do it. That was a bad thing. Shelley didn't like it. I don't like it. Please don't do it again. Thank you.
I'm sorry. We have another round. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We do have a consent agenda this evening. So I just, on the consent agenda, I'm going to ask the town clerk to please read the consent agenda.
Supervisor Copa, 1, 2. Councilmember Berger, 1. Councilmember Lavin, 1. Councilmember Zuccalla, 1, 2, 3 was withdrawn, 4, 5. Councilmember Marnucci, 1, 2. Town Attorney, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Building maintenance, 1. Controller, 1, 2. Contract compliance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Engineering, 1, 2. Highway, 1. Human Resources, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Information Technology, 1. Planning, 1, 2. Police, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sewer Plant, 16, 1, 2, 3. Communications, 1. Consent, 2. Consent, 3. Referred to attorney. Planning, 4. Referred to attorney. Thank you.
All right. All in favor? Motion to adopt the consent agenda as it appears, or as it's as read.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We do have that resolution 2024-133. So Don, it wasn't withdrawn. It's just we had to hold it for a vote tonight, a voice vote on the resolution itself. The resolution is an adoption of a P order for NYDEC oversight. So we've been working with New York State DEC over the past 6 months, attempting to ascertain exactly what is or is not in portions of that facility. And the reality is there is a certain the magnitude of contaminants which New York State DEC said that they had extrapolated from the original very limited study conducted during the Brownfield program was not the circumstance across that golf course. And that, as Mr. Drongoski stated, the southern end, which is the end where there was very limited golf or almost no golf except for hole 1 and maybe the tee box for hole 2, there really isn't anything of substantial findings. So as we move forward, we've asked New York State DEC to act as the oversight for dealing with future testing and or contaminant removal. DEC has obliged us in that, in their willingness to be participatory with the town and that should ensure that as we move forward with anything at Central Park on that site, that we have the correct procedures, and that we are ensuring the safety of residents moving forward, that we are reducing or eliminating whatever we can of contaminants that could be harmful, but it's pretty limited in its scope. The scope is published online, or the findings are published online. You can look at them on our website. With that, I'm going to motion to adopt the P order for NYSDEC oversight.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. With that, the only thing we have left is a second round of public expression. I'm going to motion to open that at this time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Don Smith again.
Don Smith, North Long. I took a look at all the documents for the P order. I looked at the construction, I forget what it is, construction completion order or whatever it's called, the document that follows that. It has a lot of information. In fact, the majority of the information was there is from the days originally with the Mensch capital studies and their work done on that property. A lot of that old information is in there. I'm looking for what's new information, and I'm looking for what is the real state of that property, and I'm looking to find out this information in as much time to the public as you are getting the same information from the state. Now, will we be getting that information from this? You will be getting that information from the state. They're acting as your agent there, essentially. Something like
Yeah,
that.
they're oversight, but yes.
There's something like they're working in your behalf. In other words, you're not doing their part. They're doing the okaying of the work.
That's really.
Is that true?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's hard to understand that document when you read it. What are they doing? Is my question.
Okay.
So the P order lays out a process wherein, for every section that's developed in the park, testing happens. It's under a plan that they have to approve ahead of time, a site characterization work plan. Testing then happens, results are provided to the DEC. They then say what level of cleanup would be required, if any, depending on the use of that portion of the park. Some cleanup is not going to be needed. In some other areas, we may need to remediate, we may need to dig out. They'll oversee all of that, and then at the end of that oversight, for each section as we submit this, the DEC will give the town a letter of no further action needed. So it's a piece-by-piece, section-by-section process.
Okay, so that leaves me with only one question. You say that the use is an important condition that they're looking at to decide whether the remediation is to the proper level. Does that mean that the use once specified is locked in and cannot be changed? Or if you do change the use, if the use is at a higher, you know what I mean by higher level, you have to go back and do that over again?
We would. Yeah, we would have to go back. The use is for the intended use as it's developed.
Thank you very much.
Chris Sargowski, Youngs Road. I'd like to follow up with the town attorney. That was a good explanation. But under this P proposal, it's stating for passive and active recreation. What about animals grazing out there? I mean, that's got to meet a whole different standard altogether.
I'm going to answer and just say that now that we've gotten tests, we have a lot of components in the park that we have to evaluate. So that's going to be all part of it. And then we'll be working with New York State DEC on those evaluations.
But according to this report, you're doing 19 acres, correct? Approximately 19 acres. The front of the...
It's the initial component. It's not the entirety.
Right, section 1.1.1.1.2, I believe they identified it as in the report. So it still leaves the entire property. Now, you mentioned the first tee, the second tee. Well, I was a member there. So I can assure you that the ninth green, that pond on the ninth pond that is by the ninth green, the eighth green, and the water canal on the eighth green. I'd love to see those results. But what's even a bigger problem is out in the golf course. Since we're talking holes, let's talk number 3, the green. It was probably one of the largest golf greens in the country. It's gigantic, and it flows directly into a large pond. So you can imagine the size, and since the report states that these greens were needed to be really tested at a different level of tees and fairways, that all that fertilizer ran off into that pond and ran through the waterway in that golf course. So my point is, are we going to get the entire golf course tested, or are we just going to do what we need to do for Music Fair and Buffalo, the Heritage Village, if we ever get that far?
I'll just say, yes, the intent is to continue to test the whole golf course.
Piece by piece.
Well, as we
As you
move, we're going to
expand-
keep
as you
expanding.
expand the park, okay. But it really came, Ms. Marinucci, I feel sorry for you. I bet you never guessed you'd get involved in this, all of this. But she does do her work, folks. I've watched her. She makes eye contact. She writes down her notes. So, don't drag her into the other stuff. You're now on the your liaison to the Youth and Recreation. Would you do me one favor? Would you ask them to post their meeting agenda, when they're meeting, their agenda, and their minutes? That hasn't been on there for 3 years. I think maybe 6 times in 3 years. Ms. Berger, could you explain why that's happened since you've been liaisons that period of time? No. Folks,
We'll answer at the end of the comment.
please let's see the agendas, because you know what? We now have our season pass to the golf course, and you can check this because you all have your tax. The season pass to the Audubon Golf Course is now higher than your general town tax. $700 to $750 for a season pass. The average $300,000 home is around $700, the general town tax, just that. We have the highest rates of any municipal golf course in Western New York. And they go up every single year, and the only improvements have been $30,000 for signage, which are really poor. Thank you.
I'll be nice. Okay, so what you were just talking about with this Westwood.
Name and address again.
Oh,
You know the
Shelley-
rules.
Shelley, well, I forget them though. Shelley Schratz, Amherst, Kensington Avenue. All right, so the Westwood project. You're talking about what you can and cannot do. Just for clarification, because so many people keep asking, you changed the zoning for the Westwood. It's now a PUD. Can you explain the definition of a PUD and what that means to the town? Brian, you would be the best person. I'm not putting you on the spot, but you're the best person to explain it. So because the people understand the PUD to be meaning now that since you changed the zoning to that, it's all under the privy of the town board. They don't have to answer to the planning department. They can do, I don't even know about the zoning department. It's, let me just finish. You said finish, I'm finishing. That they can do, you can do, make these decisions. Now, you have, as Chris said, there have been lack of meetings for whatever reason for every committee for the last 4 years. I've looked at them all myself, all right? There are so many unanswered questions. There's a lawsuit with Westwood, all right? The people are in favor of some things. I think it's time that maybe, not you, Brian, maybe Angela, I don't know, maybe Sean, the two of you, find the time to sit down with the residents and hear them out. And the reason I say this is there were those, you did those streetscapes and those meetings, and I was at those meetings. And that one meeting during the day, the people from Snyder were there, and they were tearing down the garage. That's why people are not trusting our government. Lack of transparency, lack of planning, or just the appearance of that it's not done the right way. The planning department, you're with the planning department, right, Dan, still? Okay, you're with that? I mean, we need people there, and not just department heads. And years ago, the board members, somebody would be there, and they were held accountable. So I'm calm, I'm breathing. I have to go home and do laundry.
And could you quickly paraphrase what a PUD is?
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer that.
I'll go back through questions at the end. I'm going to ask Dan to do this because he might.
Here, I got something to say.
Okay, Tom.
I'm involved with the politics since
I asked
1984.
Tom,
In this town, I'm ashamed of myself because you guys are Democrats. I'm a Democrat. You guys are. We fought the Democrats to take over the town because the Republicans were out of control. You guys are out of control, what you've done the last 8 years.
Okay.
I'm ashamed. I can't believe the Democrats are behind you board, both all of you, especially you, Brian. I can't believe you. Really? What we did in 1990s, we fought against the developers. 1990s, I was there. And you know what? I'm just letting you know, you guys are all be ashamed. All of you should be ashamed. All the developers, you're in the pocket of the developers.
You're not.
I fought against the developers.
Okay.
I was part of the Amherst.
Tom, have a seat.
I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed.
Okay. Dan, can you please continue with the PUD description?
Yes. A PUD is a plan unit development, which is a flexible mechanism that the town board is enabled to modify uses on a given parcel based on a planned development. That's what was done for the Westwood property. It's still currently zoned recreation conservation, but the overall plan was adopted and approved by the town board with modified uses. And that's as succinct as I can be.
Thank you. All right, is anybody further?
Matt Plunkett, North Hill Drive. I know we're not supposed to address individual board members, so I just want to say something to the board in general. I want to say how badly I feel for Councilman Berger for having, I'm sorry, I want to say how badly I feel for Councilman Berger that she had to attend 10 meetings over one of the land use projects in this town. That sounds almost like work to have to go to 10 meetings.
No, you can't be derogatory towards a board member.
I'm not, I'm just saying it. And I'm trying to think of how many of the old growth trees must have been lost to prepare pads of paper for her to doodle on in 10 meetings. And for people who come up here and complain about the behavior of this crowd, it began up there. It didn't begin here.
Kathy Ecolina, Maple Road. In looking at a picture at the Westwood Disney World, I noticed that on Sheridan Drive, right near Frank Hauser, there's either an entrance or an exit that's close to it. There's a light on Frank Hauser where a lot of people use to get out on Sheridan Drive for safety. To put that exit or entrance so close to it, I'm afraid that with all the planning, that light's going to be taken out. I mean, for all the planning that's done by this board, some stupid things have been done, namely North Maplemere. That light is dangerous. People think they can make a left turn westbound on Maple because the light is red. There have been so many cars T-boned there. And I have talked to the Traffic Safety Board, and there's not a darn thing they can do. So, I mean, for all the planners that are being paid so much to do all this, that neighborhood is getting so dangerous, and it's all because of this stupidity.
Anything further? Got a motion to close public expression? Second.
Wait.
Go ahead.
This is quick. Christina Coyle, Lens, 64 East Chateau Terrace. And I just want to come back to the topic of PUD, and I want to return to April and May of 2023 and Resolution 2023-326. This was discussed in the planning board space, and it came before the town board. And basically, 2023-326 was an essential process that was described as one that would take planning out of the hands of planning board and would give basically the authority to an entity and take away the transparency. So everyone here is hearing this because you all rescinded this resolution, and now you approved a PUD. And the PUD is essentially, functionally, the same thing as that resolution 2023-326. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move to close public expression. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
And, you know, I will just say that in the case of the PUD, the planning board recommended the approval, and it puts in place a planning regulatory process. So it's fundamentally different from what was originally proposed, and you know, I feel like this is the best case to move forward with a complicated project. So, with that, I'm going to motion to adjourn the board meeting.
Second.
All in favor?